Hello everyone, good evening. This is Kelly Beatty for Chelmsford Telemedia coming to you live from the Chelmsford Senior Center for the fall session of the annual town meeting. Now that's one of two things we can usually depend on in October, the other being the Red Sox being in the playoffs, but that's not going to happen this year. So let's have fun with town meeting. You know, there are 27 warrant articles on this meeting's warrant. And you know, looking down the list, I might have guessed that maybe we could get through them all in one night. I don't think so, because there are 3 or 4 of them that I think are going to be road bumps on our way to closure. Important ones to be sure. We're going to start out first, however, with town reports. And in particular, town meeting reps tonight will hear an update on how the town has spent the roughly $10.6 million that it received from the American Rescue Plan Act quite some time ago at this point. About $7.9 million of that has been allocated to various projects throughout the town, and we'll see if town manager Paul Cohen has a report on other plans. He and the select board have been working with planning and public works and everyone to try to understand the best ways to spend that remaining money. I think we'll get an update on that tonight. But here are the articles that in my mind are going to be the issues going forward. One is Article 7 and 8, which have to do with the potential purchase of about 42 acres of farmland, the Coolest Farm. 4 parcels in all are involved with that. And I think there's going to hear some controversy about whether the town really should be buying that for open space or using it for some other purpose. It's not one of those situations where the town is in a favored status due to owed taxes or farming strictures or anything like that. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Article 16 calls for the formulation of a strategic plan committee for the town, not to be confused with the master plan committee, which is within the last couple of years weighed in on infrastructurally, where Chelmsford should be going. This strategic plan committee will be looking at specifically where Chelmsford should be going in the next decade. Then Article 17, I need you to watch, because that is where we will be hearing how best to use most of the free cash that has been certified as leftover from last fiscal year. That free cash is totaling about $950,000, and the recommendation is to put that in the stabilization fund, that rainy day fund that the town has. Currently it's sitting at $13.7 million, which is not quite 9%, and prudent fiscal management would suggest that the stabilization fund should be at least at $10 million. And then finally, the one I want you to spend the most time thinking about is Article 25, which has been put forward by the Sustainable Energy Committee here in town to recommend that we create a specialized energy code overlay, a bylaw that would have some sort of requirements for new construction here in town. Things like make sure that it's wired for all electric appliances, or have solar cells on the roofs. This is shaping up to be the most controversial article on the warrant tonight, and so I hope you'll stick around for that. I spoke briefly with town manager Paul Cohen. He is pretty sure it's going to go for 2 nights, and I suspect that we might get as far as maybe Article 17 before we call it a night. I want to mention that 9 of the articles on this warrant will be handled in what's called a consent agenda. This is a relatively new feature where we sort of bundle together a number of bills, a number of articles that don't really have the expectation of confrontation, and so they tend to get all at once. Here's the Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all. Before we begin, may we have a moment of silence in memory of former town meeting representatives who have passed away since our last meeting. Daniel Burke, Kathleen Fitzpatrick, Robert Joyce, and Frederick Wickander. Now let's test our voting devices, and I will declare a quorum. And while we're doing that, Pete Padula from Chelmsford Telemedia is going to say a few words about our spectacular microphone system here.
So that's actually a perfect example. If it doesn't work, we just have to wait for Peter, the other Peter, at the board to turn it up. So we're trying, we understand, at Telemedia, we understand that this is a very difficult room to hear in sometimes. It's always been a challenge for us year over year. We're trying something a little different this time. We have we used to try 2 mics, now we have 1 microphone. So the one thing to know is when you come up to this microphone, because we all want to be heard, right? Not only in this room, but on television. Try to stand on this blue mat we have on the floor. Stand about this far away from the microphone, and make sure the microphone is aimed at your voice. I'm about 5'10", so this mic is aimed at me. If the person before me were about 5 feet, it would be right about here. And now you can see you cannot hear me. You cannot hear me if you come up and the mic is like that. You must raise the microphone so that it's in front of your voice. Similarly, there's a few people, Badri, I think, is probably 6'3". So if it was here,
88.
and I came up and wanted to talk, and I really want to talk to people, I really want them to hear me. And sometimes I'm very energetic, and I really turn around and I talk to people in the room. But it doesn't really work. So we'll try to find you. You can do your part. Try to put the mic near your voice, right? And up, down, and have a great meeting. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. For the record, I've examined the return of service and that this meeting has been properly noticed. The voting devices have indicated that we have a quorum. I am also obligated to explain that we've got 2 fire exits on both sides of the room and 1 way in the back when you first entered. I've also been asked to request that if you have to leave the meeting early, kindly drop off your electronic voting devices with the checkers in the front hall. I would like to welcome all town meeting representatives to tonight's meeting. As has been our practice, we have 2 screens so that all representatives may read the articles and any amendments upon which you will be voting. You can also view the slides on the screen on your tablets, laptops, computers, or other smart devices. Simply log on using the instructions on the screen that is not visible right now, but I'm sure will be momentarily. Speaking of amendments, all amendments will be submitted on the forms which you get from either the town clerk or myself. If you know prior to town meeting that you intend to file amendment, you may see me or Trish Zuris prior to the meeting for the form, or you can email them to me and I will make the necessary copies and distribute them to town council and the typist so that they will be ready before town meeting begins. And if you get it to either of us prior to the introduction of that article, town council should have the opportunity to review the amendment, which will expedite the meeting. This form will create an original in 3 copies. I received the white copy. The yellow copy goes to the amendment assistant, the pink copy to the town clerk, and you retain the orange copy for yourself. I want to thank Chelmsford Telemedia for their assistance in setting up the screens, timer, streaming, and broadcasting this meeting. Here are the rules with respect to town meeting protocol and procedure. All questions and debate shall emanate from the microphone facing the moderator in the center of the hall and shall go through the moderator. Board or committee members, other town officials, or department heads may use other microphones to answer questions or provide information to the meeting. Speakers shall refrain from asking rhetorical or argumentative questions and shall only ask questions seeking needed information. The questions should be in the who, what, when, where, and why mode. Kindly avoid argumentative questions that start or end with, "Isn't it true?" or "Wouldn't you admit?" I would prefer not to have to rule questions out of order, but I am bound by the laws and regulations that define our conduct, and I will do the best of my ability to enforce them fairly and respectfully. I will allow a reasonable amount of follow-up questions, but I have to intervene if any individual is asking an excessive amount of questions. All presenters of articles shall be limited to 10 minutes, and I shall notify each when they have 1 minute remaining. With respect to discussion, speakers are encouraged to be brief, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes of debate. You should be able to make your points within 3 minutes. If you truly believe that this is not enough time for you to make your arguments, kindly advise me in advance and I may allow some leeway. This time limit also applies to those responding to questions. Speakers should ask their questions prior to engaging in discussion. Making inquiries will not be considered as part of the 3-minute discussion limit unless you have started discussion and then ask questions. Once the clock starts, it will not stop until the speaker does or time expires. I would appreciate being advised that a speaker is beginning discussion. A speaker should not speak a second time and shall only be given this opportunity to correct or dispute a statement of fact made by a previous speaker. This privilege will be narrowly construed by the moderator. We do have some other rules of protocol. Please do not refer to any prior speaker by name. The proper designation is to call him or her the previous speaker. Please refrain from personal attacks. Challenging or arguing in opposition to another's position is fair game and is what this meeting is all about. Intentional slander against any individual or group cannot be tolerated. Let us refrain from repeating arguments that have already been made, but new ideas or distinctions are welcome and encouraged. Discussion of pending litigation will not be permitted unless specifically included in the warrant article being debated. If during the course of discussion I observe several speakers on one side of an issue, but none in opposition, I will interrupt debate to inquire if there are any who wish to express the opposing position or offer an amendment. If there are none, I shall end debate and move the question. If there is opposition, I will move that party to the front of the line and allow debate to continue. I trust that you will all appreciate how this will advance our mutual goal of moving town meeting along. To those who may be next in line, should I ever have to exercise this process, you have my apologies in advance. There will not be any debating from the presenter's podium. They may answer questions, but should they want to engage in debate, presenters will have to queue up in line like everyone else. Transparency and effective governance are the two goals of town meeting. To expedite our meeting without affecting transparency, we have successfully employed a process called consent agenda. A consent agenda allows the representatives to bundle several routine warrant articles into one so that instead of taking several separate votes on these essentially bookkeeping articles, we take one vote on all of them. The town manager and I have discussed the type of articles that would be conducive to this process. These are articles that generally do not involve any questions or debate and are passed in the normal course of town business. I shall request a motion that the body vote to approve a consent agenda involving the articles contained therein. This still allows for questions and answers and discussion with the opportunity to add or delete consent agenda articles as town meeting deems best. To that end, I am suggesting that the fall consent agenda consists of the following articles: 2 through 6, 14, 15, 18, and 19. Article 5 requires no action, so it has been added to this motion to expedite our meeting. Out of regard for the presenters and your fellow town meeting representatives, I must respectfully request that there be no conversations at your table. If I can hear background discussions up here, it means that there may be representatives who cannot hear the presentation, questions and answers, or discussion. At the end of tonight's session, I will entertain a motion to reconvene on Thursday, October 19th at 7:30 at the Senior Center. Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Paul Cohen, Town Manager. As is customary at every spring or fall town meeting, the first report article is to hear reports of town officers and committees. This evening, we have basically two reports. One, our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, will be providing an update on the expenditure of the town's American Rescue Plan Act monies. And then our Finance Director will, in conformance with the town bylaws, preside a 5-year financial forecast. And then I'll just present a slide that goes over the financial overview of the allocation of the town's newly certified free cash. So without further ado, and in keeping with the moderator's desires to keep the meeting efficient and moving, I'll turn the podium over to our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy.
Good evening. So tonight I will be giving an overview of the ARPA. So the American Rescue Plan Act that was passed in 2021 by the federal government, and this was in response to provide for the public health and economic impacts of COVID. These funds were provided under the American Rescue Plan Act. So the town of Chelmsford received just approximately $10.6 million in ARPA funds. These funds could be used for various purposes. The Select Board allocated the first round of the ARPA-funded projects in 2022, allocating $7.9 million of the $10.6 million, or 75% of funds. This was spread amongst 46 projects, and I will get into some detail of how we spent the money to date. We have provided, since these funds were appropriated, we have provided monthly project progress reports to the Select Board. In terms of a timeline, all the funds have to be allocated by December of 2024, and they have to be completed, projects spent, invoiced by December 2026. This provides a summary of how we have to date allocated the $10.6 million. So we have $4.6 million, or 44% of the funds have gone to date to the ventilation improvements to town, schools, and buildings. At the onset of COVID, that really was a focus point, and so I think it really was needed to upgrade our town and school buildings to accommodate the needs. Another large portion of the spending has gone to other capital infrastructure improvements, drainage, a fire rescue truck. I will get into some examples. And then we have 5% of projects that were spent amongst various projects, additional economic support for social services, 5% of the total funds for public health related projects. And then so to date, that leaves about just about under $2.4 million that has not been allocated as of yet. And like I said, we do have until December of 2024 to allocate that. So as I had indicated, we do provide monthly updates to the Select Board, and we track through spreadsheets, we track how we've procured the projects to date. So as of this last September, that's the last update to the Select Board. Of the 46 projects, or the $7.9 million, we've procured 95% of the projects. We also look at the project cost to see how we're tracking. So amongst the $7.9 million that was first allocated, we are projecting a 3% overrun. I think it's relatively, given the construction costs that we have seen, the industry inflation, that is something that we have seen across all projects, really. And then also we look at the amount invoice completed to track, once it's procured, how fast it's projects being completed. So to date, we have completed 60% of the 46 projects, or the $7.9 million. So now I'm just going to go over some of the examples. I'm not going to go over all 46 projects, but just give some highlights. Really, there's so many needs, there's so many infrastructure. We have a lot of age infrastructure between roads, buildings, ventilation needs. So this really was a great opportunity to be able to complete some much needed projects. So the first project here is the Byam Elementary School. We completed ventilation upgrades to the Byam Elementary School. This project was completed this summer, and it provided 2 new air handlers to provide fresh tempered air to the administration, library, and special education teachers' workroom areas. These were really landlocked areas that needed ventilation. And similar to that, we also had, so the Harrington has a essentially identical layout to the Byam School. So that was really a duplicate project that was also completed by the same contractor this summer as well, providing the fresh air to ventilation to the same spaces, but at the Harrington School. So happy to report that that project was complete this summer. Also, actually here at this space, we do have some ventilation upgrades that will be completed at the senior center. So this project has been procured. Right now, the contractor's ordering equipment. There's quite a significant lead time on some equipment, so this project will actually not really begin till next spring, summer. Right now, we're in the procurement or the ordering of equipment phase, but a contract has been identified. The project scope includes the design, installation of a new dedicated outdoor air system and a new energy recovery ventilation unit. And this serves really the main areas in the senior center. Also, this space actually that we sit in today, that also is included in the project. The 2 air handling units that are in this space, they are aged and need to be replaced, so that is also part of this project. And like I said, this is anticipated next spring, summer. New engine fire rescue truck. This is another great opportunity. So typically the fire rescue trucks go on a 15-year cycle. This was ordered about over a year ago. We were able to get the fire truck this spring, finish fitting it out and have it in use this summer. This is at Engine 1. The Katrina Road Pump Station Repair Project. So this funded through ARPA. Katrina Road Pump Station is the largest pump station in town. We do daily inspections at our pump stations, and during a daily inspection, we found that this 16-inch force main had a leak. Fortunately, that leak was caught, so it did not cause any sanitary sewer overflows. The leak had to be repaired. It was found at a leaking valve. That valve happened to be 18 feet down, so it was a very complicated replacement, taking a couple weeks to complete. Not only did that, and it's shown here, not only did we have to just repair it, but we also had to maintain sewer flows. So there was a significant bypass that was completed or was over on Glen Ave. This project was completed in May of 2021. Another project is the sewer infiltration and inflow investigation project, and I know there's a later warrant article to talk about sewer infiltration and inflow. There were a few areas that were targeted, pictured here. We have an area tributary to the Southwell Pump Station in North Chelmsford. We have also some areas really, bound between Littleton Road in the center and Dalton Road, tributary to the Katrina Road Pump Station. This is about 90,000 linear feet of pipe, 500 manholes, represents about 12% of our system. I think everyone here probably does know that we have a significant sewer capacity constraint, and so we are trying to find any ways to remove infiltration or inflow from our system. Anything we can remove from the system, hopefully we can have that as additional sewer capacity. In the inspection process, the pipes were actually found to be really in fair or excellent condition. Since our pipes are mostly PVC, there's not much infiltration. And also just to explain the difference between infiltration and inflow. So infiltration is when water infiltrates through weaknesses in the system, typically through pipe joints or through joints in manholes. Inflow is something that's actually introduced into the sewer system, so that's often from a roof drain, a sump pump, or it could be a catch basin. This program primarily, even though it was infiltration, was primarily focused on infiltration. We do have another program right now, a sump pump inspection program, where we are trying to identify additional sources of inflow. This project, we actually just recently presented the final findings of this project in this summer and presented it to DEP. And like I said, there is a future warrant article on for tonight to talk about some of the recommendations, which rehabilitation of manholes. So the town has 325 culverts, which is a large amount of culverts that we have throughout town. We do have a stormwater master plan that identifies different infrastructure needs, and in that there are recommendations for additional structural evaluations on some of the culverts. So we found this opportunity using ARPA funds to inspect 14 culverts that were identified in the report. Pictured here, just a few: Middlesex over Stony Brook, Warren Ave over River Meadow Brook, Garrison Road over Beaver Brook, and Cushing Place over Beaver Brook. These include structural evaluation, and that's actually overall assessment, just to see if there's any needs. We actually are still waiting for that final report. We should be receiving it this month. And I'm sure there'll be some recommendations coming from that assessment. So that just is a quick overview of the projects. Like I said, there's 46 projects, and we go through monthly with a select board to provide updates. That just highlights, as you can see, there's substantial opportunity that we have, to upgrade our infrastructure. We still have about 2.4 million that's unallocated. So moving forward, we'll continue to provide monthly updates to the select board. We have prepared another, round 2 of lists on how we could potentially spend that $2.4 million, or I think 2.3, because I know we're looking at contingency as well. And so the first round is the 44% of projects went to ventilation. At the point in time, that was ventilation in buildings was really a prime focus. The latest focus is drainage. We have had the rainiest summer, I think almost the rainiest summer on record. Also, a lot of the events that we've had have been very high intensity rain events. And so this summer, even though that at least has given us an opportunity to identify areas where we really do need to focus on. So that makes up a lot of this next round of the projects presented to the select board. 3 of the watershed projects have actually already been approved, just, because we have to look at the watershed and then from there potentially make recommendations. That was approved at the September 25th meeting. And here just pictured, these were also identified as part of the stormwater master plan, so it's great to be able to fund some of these recommendations. So watershed assessments will be completed at Woodbine Evergreen area, Tingsboro Road Dunshire Drive area, and the Graniteville Road Davis Road area. We're actually putting together the scopes right now, and then we will be continuing that work this fall, winter, and hopefully having recommendations to put into place this spring, or depending on funding. The remaining projects that we have compiled, that list will be presented. I believe it's October 23rd is the next select board meeting, so we'll continue those conversations and hoping to have more of these projects move forward. The plan would be that some of the drainage projects would be designed in-house, permitted in-house this winter, and then being able to proceed in the spring, potentially with construction. Here's some other projects too, just to highlight some drainage projects that we've so the first one here is Mill Road drainage improvements. There's a significant amount of erosion that we have seen. This is over on Mill Road near Ready Way. Really looking at how we can address the roadside runoff. We talked about maybe adding a berm, but when we add that berm, we need to maybe add a downstream catch basin. There is a culvert, so we can, through permitting, potentially connect to that culvert. So that's a smaller scale project, but an opportunity. The next picture here, and this was from July, during a very high intensity rain event at Anstey Road and Jesse Road. I think we got 2 or maybe 3 inches of rain in an hour. And this whole intersection flooded to the point where there was, as you can see, a vehicle was unfortunately stranded and had to be rescued. Looking further into this, the existing drainage in this area needs updates. The configuration of it needs to be reconfigured, updated, so it can be more efficient. So that's a project that we've identified with the use of, hopefully with ARPA funds. And tying to that, though, is downstream of this Anstey Road and Jesse Road, it actually outlets to Pendleton Drive, which actually, I think, exits out to River Meadow Brook. If you look at this picture, you can see that the outfall is completely underwater and has a lot of sediment in front of it as well. And that sediment is not natural to the stream. That's washed out from probably many years of sand and other material washing into the stream. So we're proposing a stream bed cleaning that would also help just really alleviate that whole area. So that is one project that is, that's also paired with that Anstey Road and Jesse Road project. And that's all. Like I said, this is, I think, if I can say that we have so many infrastructure needs, really that outweigh the, the sources that we have available, but this was, I think, what I see as a great opportunity how we could make improvements to the various needs in town. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'd like to provide you with some highlights of our updated 5-year financial forecast. In this presentation, we'll take a look at our revenue sources, our expenditure trends, and then we'll take a look at the overall forecast. So, under revenue, looking ahead for fiscal year 25, our largest source of revenue continues to be local property taxes. So we start with our levy base of just over $119 million, which is a historical figure based on the prior year's levy limit. If you add the 2.5% increase and then estimated new growth of $1.5 million, along with excluded debt of just over $1 million, that's for our sewer, school, and public works related projects, that gives us a total levy of $124.6 million that can be raised through property taxes. Next, we look at state aid. So that's our second largest revenue source. So Chapter 70 aid for education continues to be the largest component. We're estimating that Chapter 70 will increase approximately $900,000, which is about 6.4%. We're estimating that general municipal aid will increase about 3%. It's important to note that at this time that those estimates are always subject to change. Then we look at available funds. This includes a variety of reimbursements from several revolving and special purpose funds. Similar to prior years, it includes a reimbursement from the school child care fund to cover the cost of employee health insurance. It also includes a $2.3 million transfer from our sewer capital construction fund to pay for debt service for the final phases of our sewer system. And then we look at the last revenue categories, local receipts, and motor vehicle excise tax continues to account for about 50% of this category. Looking ahead, we see motor vehicle excise tax increasing around $50,000 or just about 1%, and that's based on the current collection trends that we saw last fiscal year and at the beginning of this year. If you look, total local receipts are forecasted to increase just over $520,000 or just under 5%. So if we add all of those categories together, that gives us $162.3 million of revenue. Then we move on to expenditures. For general government personnel, the forecast includes step increases and a 2.5% cost of living allowance. General government expenses are estimated to increase 2% unless otherwise noted. For the Chelmsford Public Schools, the forecast includes an increase of 3% for the coming fiscal year. For Neshoba Valley Technical High School, the projected increase is about $193,000, which is about a 5% increase. And then we move on to debt service. So as many of you know, debt service is broken down into 3 categories. Excluded debt, non-excluded, and then betterment-funded debt. So excluded debt, which occurs whenever voters approve a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion, that is currently, I'm just going to move to the chart so you can see a little graphically. So excluded debt service is currently $1.67 million this fiscal year. For the coming fiscal year, it's going to decline about $572,000. And you can see it's basically, it'll be completely repaid in 2030. Non-excluded debt service is shown in blue on the chart. It's currently $7.05 million this fiscal year. Next year, that increases by about $650,000 to $7.7 million. Oops, excuse me. And that And the non-excluded debt service assumes that we'll continue to borrow $4 to $4.2 million annually for our capital improvement plan. Betterment-funded debt service is shown in yellow on the chart, and as we mentioned earlier, that includes, that's for all of the final phases of the sewer project. Betterment-funded debt will remain around $2.3 million for the next 2 fiscal years, and then it will begin to decline in fiscal year 27. And then we take a look at employee benefits. Our Middlesex County retirement assessment for fiscal year 25 increases $745,000 to just over $12 million, and this assessment is based on the most recent actuarial valuation as of January 1st, 2022. On the next January 1st, a new actuarial assessment will be conducted after that by Middlesex County. Our health insurance budget. So for active employees, we're estimating an increase of just over $1 million or 8% for fiscal year 25. This is based on current guidance from our insurer and as a result of the increasing costs for medical services. The health insurance budget for retirees is estimated to increase about 6% to $3.4 million for the coming fiscal year. So if we add up all of these expenditure categories by function, you'll see that the total of those is $162.3 million. So if we pull the revenues and expenditures together in the forecast, and since you have this available as a handout, and I know this is difficult to read, we're going to go to the summary screen. And so at this point, I'm projecting that we'll have a balanced budget for fiscal year 25, and we will have deficit balances for the next 4 fiscal years. As a percentage of operating revenue, you'll see that the deficits vary from 0.75% up to just under 4%. And although it can be concerning to see projected deficit balances after fiscal year 25, it's important to remember that we're still early in the budget cycle. One key point that I wanted to mention is that going forward, the town's operating budget is going to be under greater pressure in the years ahead as we continue to absorb higher costs due to inflation in the national economy, while our main revenue source, property taxes, remains constrained by the limits of Proposition 2.5. There are a few factors that could have a big impact on the fiscal year 25 budget, and we'll know much more about these around the February-March timeframe. So the first is state aid. Once Governor Healy releases the state budget and the state aid figures in late January, we'll have a better idea of those figures. For health insurance premiums, we should have more information on those available around late February as well. It's important to keep in mind that our current health insurance budget is just under $15 million, so every additional 1% adds up to just about $150,000. On the Schober assessment, we'll also receive more information on this in February, and although we don't have an exact enrollment count at this point in time, we do know that interest in vocational education is continuing to increase. And then also, and finally, I touched on this earlier, inflation. This is something that's sort of pressuring both sides of the budget. And what I mean by that is higher wages under personnel services, and inflation also results in higher costs that everything the town buys under supplies and services. And this next chart sort of illustrates that. Despite numerous increases in key interest rates by the Federal Reserve Bank during 2022 and the first half of 23, and that was an attempt to try to slow spending and consumption in the economy, the U.S. inflation rate continues to run about 3.7%. Now, it's down from the 2 previous years that you see right there. However, you can see that it's still far above what it was for many years preceding 21. Then we move on to reserves. Our financial plan includes maintaining a healthy stabilization fund and dedicating reserves towards stabilization and extraordinary capital like our roadways. The town ended fiscal year 23 with just over $2.8 million in free cash, which is actually a decrease of about $530,000 from the previous fiscal year. And as many of you know, the amount of free cash varies by each fiscal year. This next slide shows a history of certified free cash since 2014, and you can see it shown as a percentage of general budget operating revenues. And so the 2.8 million represents about just over 1.8% of total budgeted operating revenue. Next, we'll take a closer look at stabilization. This chart shows a history of the stabilization fund since 2012 and the plan going forward. We closed the fiscal year on June 30th with a stabilization balance of $13.66 million. During fiscal year 23, town meeting approved a transfer of $1.08 million of free cash into the fund, and there were no withdrawals made from the fund. The withdrawals that you see for the coming 5 fiscal years of $500,000 are shown there just as a contingency for something unforeseen. And then this graph just shows a history of the stabilization fund balance as a percentage of total budgeted operating revenue. The current fiscal year is shown in red. And you can see that it's important that we maintain a strong stabilization balance as we seem to be heading into an uncertain economic environment. Stabilization reserves are something that credit rating agencies such as Standard & Poor's pay very close attention to, and we need to maintain our stabilization reserves to retain our AAA bond rating and to reduce future long-term borrowing costs, and also to give us the flexible financial flexibility to respond to any unforeseen events that may arise. And that concludes the 5-year forecast.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, John. And then this last slide basically just provides you, as John indicated in his report, the amount of free cash that we have available to us this evening as certified as of July 1. And as you can see, we're basically appropriating half of it to roadway and sideway construction, and then about another $950,000 to the general stabilization fund. And again, we'll visit this as we go through each of the articles. That concludes the presentation under Article 1, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Let's get to Article 2 in the consent agenda.
Do you need I move that the town meeting approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Is there a second?
That's what, I just made the motion.
He made the motion. We need a second, and then we'll discuss the okay. So let's discuss the consent agenda.
Basically, as the moderator indicated, we have 9 articles here before you. As he indicated, we tend to group them towards the beginning of the warrant. Many of them are annual articles that you see at every fall town meeting, such as the cemetery improvement, sewer construction stabilization fund. We always leave a placeholder for funding collective bargaining agreements. Article 5, as was noted earlier, there's no action taken. We're not proposing to amend the operating budget. And then we have the ministerial task of appropriating the statewide opioid settlement abatement funds, which are restricted in their use and have to be reported to the state. And then we put on a few what I call minor capital articles that haven't generated any concerns as we've gone through the process with presentations to the Finance Committee and Select Board. This has to do with masonry repairs at the Adams Library and the McKay Library, what I call a minor change to our revolving funds by the addition of a public shade tree revolving fund, which is not an appropriation of monies, but adding another source for a revolving fund. And then we have another minor article, which is funded from community preservation, which has to do with the vault shelving for our archived records. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation regarding the consent agenda?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Articles 2, 3, 4, 6, 14, 15, 18, 19, and takes no action on Article 5.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends by a vote of 4-0 Articles 2, 3, 4, 6, 14, 15, 18, and 19, and takes no action on Article 5.
Okay. Now is an opportunity for questions or discussion, if you have any.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, I can sort of walk through these just to give a quick overview on that.
That's fine.
And I'll ask my staff, Town Finance Director and Public Works Director to help. So you have in your slides, and forgive me for the not in sequential order, but the first one is Article 2, and this is under consent agenda for $75,000 for the sale of graves and lots, and this is funded by the Cemetery Improvement and Development Fund. And here's the two purposes as have been requested from the Cemetery Commission. The first one is for the Fairview Cemetery. That's $40,000 to purchase and install a second niche wall as a cherished place for cremated remains. And the second one is for the ongoing Pine Ridge Cemetery expansion project. The $35,000 request would finish the cemetery expansion project by adding a wrought iron entrance gate at the new Riverneck Road entrance, along with the associated paving, loaming, seeding, and hydro seeding at that location. I'm now going to ask our Finance Director, John Souza, to give you a quick overview on Article 3 of the consent agenda, which is the annual request every fall for the transfer into the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund. John?
Good evening. So this amount of money represents the interest earnings that we earned during the previous fiscal year on two funds, and that's our Sewer Betterment Fund and our Sewer Capital Improvement Fund, which is the surcharge that's on the sewer rate. The reason for this is we bring this to you every fall town meeting. This allows the town to transfer these monies that would flow to free cash in the general fund, and this allows us to dedicate these monies into the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund so that we can retain these monies for use in future years when we begin drawing upon the Sewer Construction Stabilization Fund in fiscal year 26 to begin paying sewer debt service.
Thank you, John. Article 4 of the consent agenda is a funding for collective bargaining agreements. We have for you one collective bargaining agreement for approval that's been approved by the Firefighters Union and the Select Board. This would be the final contract collective bargaining agreement for this three-year period of fiscal years 23 through 25. And you may be familiar with some of the terms that you may have seen at previous town meetings when we settled with other public safety unions. As I noted, it's a three-year term for fiscals 23 through 25. In terms of the compensation, we provided a $1.75 per hour adjustment and 2.5% for the fiscal year 23, 2.5% for FY24, and 2.5% for FY25. Similar to other bargaining agreements and the town's non-union classification plan, we add Juneteenth, which is now a state legal holiday, to our list of observed holidays. The union proposed and the chief supported the idea of adding station bidding language in those instances when an officer's position becomes available. And then the final request and significant change in the contract was it really has to do with the cost of living in the area, and the request came from the union if we could expand our residency requirement. Currently under civil service in Massachusetts, unless otherwise modified by a community, members of civil service, police, and fire have to live within 15 miles of the town border and in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The union requested, and we support and have seeking your approval, is basically to amend that to 25 miles distance from the town border, so expanding it from 15 to 25, as well as allowing outside the state's border, basically into southern New Hampshire. This really has to do with the cost of living in the area. We did, in our investigation and analysis of this, we found out that our neighboring communities of Dracut and Tewksbury have adopted similar such allowances in recent years. So that's the presentation under Article 4. Under Article 5, again, as was noted, there'll be no action. Article 6 is an appropriation of the statewide opioid abatement trust fund. It's $24,275. As I noted in my introductory remarks, the state's settlement on behalf of the communities of the Commonwealth, and the state was part of a national list of states that settled. The terms of the settlement require that all funds received under the opioid settlement be utilized to supplement and strengthen the resources related to this terrible affliction, and to deal with issues of prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery from the opioid epidemic. We do expect to receive additional disbursements as additional class action claims are resolved and as additional funds are released according to the multi-year schedules. So we'll be back at Springtown meeting if additional funds are received as scheduled this year. We expect we'll receive another $35,000 according to the scheduling for this remainder of this fiscal year, on top of the $140,000 that was ratified and appropriated this town meeting last fall. We now move on to the next consent agenda item, which is Article, let me get this one, get the list. Is, you know, John's going to get me there. Article 14 is the Adams Masonry Library repair, and then following this will be the McKay Library repair. And I'm going to turn the podium over to our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, who's going to give the overview of these two articles.
Good evening. So Article 14 proposes to transfer $70,000 in free cash to repair concrete stairs in the chimney at the Adams Public Library. So in FY23, capital was appropriated in the amount of $60,000 for this project to fund both the repair of the stairs and the chimney. Initial quotes were received, and based on these quotes, the overall project cost is now estimated to be $130,000. And I think that is really, the reasons for cost increase is really related to the escalation in costs that we have seen over the past few years, given inflation and just general availability of contractors and the cost of materials. This project is proposed to be bid this fall, and I would say late fall, and then construction would take place this spring of 2024. Just to go over a little bit of the scope of the north chimney repair includes demo of the existing chimney to the roof line, rebuild matching existing color, repair or replacement of the flue, install repair flashing at the roof line, and also just for access purposes to the chimney, there is scaffold that needs to be placed, so that is part of the cost. The scope for the front of the stair replacement includes demolition of the existing stairs. This is the main entrance to the McKay Library, so the ramp that is just off to the right in the picture would be used as the primary vehicle to get into the library, so maintaining access at the front. And then from there, we would build a new concrete base. New granite treads are proposed, 6 of them at 15 foot in each length. And then also the existing handrails shown here just to be refinished. Those are in fair condition. Article 15 proposes to transfer $30,000 from free cash to replace the front stairs and walkway, and then also improving the accessibility at the rear of the McKay Library. The scope for the front entrance includes demo of the existing steps and walkway, installing 2 new granite steps with a concrete base, a new walkway, power washing, and spot repairs on the existing porch as shown in this picture, and then refinishing and reinstallation of the existing rails. The ADA accessibility is not at the front of the entrance, that is at the rear of the entrance. And there are improvements that need to be made here. The ramp shown needs to be updated. The landing at the bottom of the wooden ramp that is shown is not truly flat and per 2% in all directions, which is required under ADA requirements, so that needs to be adjusted. And then also we're looking to replace the door and install some handicap push buttons to allow for easier access into the building. This is all estimated to be a cost of $30,000. It's going to go on to Article 18, Public Shade Tree Revolving Fund. So this article proposes to add a new public shade tree revolving fund, which would authorize the Director of Public Works, myself, to spend from these funds those receipts from the payment pertaining to the public shade tree removal as a result of construction or utility work to replant public shade trees. The authorized total amount in expenditures annually would be $30,000. So here pictured actually is a planting that we completed this spring. We planted DPW in coordination with the tree committee, planted 18 trees along the tree common in front of the CCA. We actually just are finishing 10 additional plantings or replacements in town offices and at some of the public schools. In terms of our tree replacement, under our, we require whatever tree we remove, we want to replace. Doesn't necessarily have to be in its exact location. It could be somewhere else in town. Sorry, getting a little feedback here. This public shade tree revolving fund would provide a mechanism to be able to acquire some of those funds when we have a tree hearing. So when we have a tree hearing, as part of that decision, I make it required that that applicant replaces trees. So I know we had a tree hearing with National Grid this past December. 36 trees were proposed to be replaced. I'm still kind of chasing down on those replacements, whereas this revolving fund would allow money to go directly into an account, and then we would draw on those funds as DPW or as we install trees throughout the town. The fee would be set as part of the tree decision process. We're looking at tree costs, in-house to install with the mulching. We estimate $600 a tree, but that fee could be updated annually or as needed. Thank you.
And then the final article on the consent agenda is Article 19, which is the next slide in your packet and here on the screen. And this is a request from our town clerk through the Community Preservation Committee. And this is to transfer $26,875. And this is basically to install lower shelving in the lower level town clerk vault in the town offices. The clerk's presentation, provides, and you have it in front of you. Basically, many of you have been longtime town meeting members. You're familiar with the fact that we began the archiving of our town records in a very serious approach a decade ago, in which our then town clerk, Honorina Maloney, obtained a report from NEDCC. It just really gave us a full scope of what needed to take place to preserve our vital records. And as you can see, over that time, we've done a number of projects. And again, this request now is to provide shelving in the lower vault of the town offices, in order to really, enhance our record storage and activity and archives of our records into in what is really a climate-controlled environment. You've seen these, in fact, at previous town meetings to the left with sort of the decrepit condition of the deteriorated records that you see, and then you can see that even some of the newer ones that are shown in the picture to the right were in tough shape, records that go back to the 1700s or even less than a century ago. And then in the next photo, you can see how the end product comes out of maintained, preserved, and utilized records. And while they're doing this, they're also scanning these records so they don't have to be handled as much manually, but we are required by the Commonwealth to preserve these records. But to come to the conclusion, what you see here is essentially how the money is going to be used. In that vault will be this rolling file unit that will provide effective storage in a climate-controlled area. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That concludes the presentations under the consent agenda.
Thank you. Now's the time if anyone has any questions regarding the articles in the consent agenda. If there are none,
Sorry, quick question. Sue Carter, Precinct 11. Under the shade tree provisions, if a homeowner, say, has a rotting tree in their front yard, will they be subject to this $600 fee?
This only applies to trees within the right-of-way.
But if that tree happens to be in the right-of-way, will the homeowner have to pay that fee? Or is there a provision to waive it for individual homeowners?
So if it's in the right-of-way, that would be a town tree, and they wouldn't be allowed to remove it without going through a tree hearing. If it, so the answer would be no. If it's their tree, it would be outside of it, but if it's a town tree, that would be subject.
Okay, I just don't want to discourage people from taking trees down. I think we all lose our power often enough and for long enough that I'd rather see the trees come down and not have somebody hesitate because of the cost. And the other thing is, I'd like to encourage the planning board to include a contribution to this shade tree fund anytime an applicant is asking for a waiver of the number of trees being planted on a site. I think that gives a public benefit to the rest of the town, and I'd encourage the board to change your regulations to incorporate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Brian Latina, Precinct 9. Question on the McKay Library entrance to make the ramp ADA compliant. Why aren't we using the funds that are available when you write a ticket in Chelmsford? There's a $400 fee if someone parks in a handicapped space without a placard. Why wouldn't we use those funds instead of our free cash?
That amount of money isn't in that.
Yeah, I don't think we have that amount of money in that account.
Do we not ticket handicap
I
violations?
can't speak to that, I don't know.
We do, and our police chief is here, our new chief, Colin Spencer, it's his first town meeting, so we recognize him here this evening. You know, we do ticket folks, but we don't take in that kind of revenue that we could take on these kind of projects for ADA accessibility in the library. Town accountant Darlene Lucy is here this evening, and she's checking the exact balance on those funds right now, but they're not even close to what we need to do these two projects.
Okay, for
So
ADA
in other words, they would be available for future projects and needs as they arrive, but we just don't have that level of funding for these two.
Okay, and the trees, the question I had on the trees in the center, the select board was given a presentation by an arborist who suggested you never mulch a tree because it will kill it within 10 years. Are we mulching these new trees and smothering the roots according to that presentation?
We are mulching around trees, but in coordination with the tree committee. I mean, you can smother roots with excessive mulch, but we're not putting excessive mulch. The mulch does also protect it. If you don't mulch enough around it, sometimes you can have lawn mowers hit it, so that also offers protection. But my understanding is that the mulch is not suffocating the roots if it's applied at a not too severe of a depth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I will not dance. Badri Uplip, Precinct 11. Quick question: is the Adams Library chimney is active use?
I mean, I have to check if it's it is actively used, yes. It is for there's two chimneys, and so I imagine there's some access or some exhaust for the heating system.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, when was the last time that the Adams Library front steps were replaced?
It'd be well over 20 years ago. I know it's been repaired over the years, but it's my understanding that the steps have reached its useful life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There being none, we'll take a vote on the consent agenda. A yes vote is to approve all of the articles, and no vote is to disapprove of any one of them.
To expedite a good chunk of the typical town meeting warrant, these 9 articles that you see here, although one wasn't discussed, they represent 1/3 of the number of articles on the warrant. And so it definitely does speed things along, typically on articles that have no obvious controversy or disagreements that have emerged in discussion.
The articles passes 117 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions.
Ted, why is it working in like steps? It's like it pauses and... Okay.
Was your vote counted, Brian?
It's,
Do you think that the 117 who actually voted in favor would be impacted by the people who didn't vote? I would like you to be on record, and there's no question about it. We can take a revote if you wish. Yes. You voted yes and it said no? One second, please. So Ted, can we revote this?
He's swapping, the IT director's swapping the laptops that you want.
Okay.
Concerned with one of the particular laptops.
A little confusion here on the part of the town meeting reps
All
because
right, so,
the
John, if we can
normally
move on, I mean,
dependable
Yeah.
wireless voting
What we're going to
system-
do is we'll move on to the next article, and then we'll come back to the consent agenda and revote it. All right? If you have no problem with that. Okay, Article 7.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 7 is maybe the most consequential article of this fall annual town meeting. Bringing it back to the beginning of the slide of Article 7. This has to do with the purchase of open space land that's commonly referred to as Coolest Farm. The request is for an appropriation of $4.16 million to purchase 41.9 acres of land off of Pine Hill Road. It consists of 4 parcels. I know it's kind of hard to see there, and even with the pointer, it'll be hard. But basically, you've got 495 in the yellow running through the property. Obviously, when the interstate was constructed, it bifurcated the farm. Your 2 main parcels, which really are the 2 parcels of significance, are to the northerly side of Interstate 495, on either side of Pine Hill Road. You've got parcel 1, which is 25.2 acres, in parcel 2, which is 6.5 acres, and then on the other side, the southerly side of the highway, you've got a 3.55 acre wet parcel that has no frontage. It's essentially all wetlands. And then you have a 6.66 acre parcel by Hunt Road as you approach that side of Interstate 495, which has some wetlands and some dry upland area. Historically, Coolest Farm was known as Otis Adams Farm. Here's a historic picture that depicts the farm back at an earlier time in the town's history. If you were to drive by there today, that's what you would see. On the right-hand side of the roadway, you see the brokerage sign and the residential structure, and then the wooded area to the right. And then if you go to into the property a little bit more, you can see it's been overgrown, and you know, it's been a few years, obviously, since active farming's taken out there. Our parcel 2 is on the opposite side of the roadway. It's 6.5 acres, and you can see in the far background there's Interstate 495. The parcel has street frontage, and it has a little bit of wetlands by the highway, obviously pertaining to the drainage from the highway. And then, as I mentioned, you have depicted on the map here again to the bottom of the photo are the parcels 3 and 4. Which again, really have not in much active use, nor are they much consequential to the acquisition price. Let me sort of bring you to date and what brings us here to town meeting and some history on what's transpired in the last year. About a year ago, our community development director, Evan Belansky, was approached by a real estate broker from Colliers International and a court-appointed petition commissioner regarding the sale of the Coolest Farm parcels. They basically wanted to get an understanding of what was the zoning in the community, you know, and just sort of what was out there in the town. What is interesting to note is this is quite different than previous conservation articles in the town's history in terms of open space acquisition. In this case, the town does not have a right of first refusal because the land in consideration is not under what we call property tax reduction programs or advantage programs. You're very familiar with them. The assessors refer to them as a chapter lands. Chapter 61 being you get a discount on your on your land if you keep it in active forestry use for taxation purposes. Chapter 61A is agricultural, which is again a tax incentive to preserve agricultural land and promote agricultural use. And 61B is for recreational property tax valuation status. So we did not have that, and in this case, the seller was actively marketing the property. They had produced a concept plan for the development of the property that was put together by Beals Associates, and it depicted 21 lots on the 22.5-acre parcel at 185 Pine Hill Road. And then across the street on the frontage along Pine Hill Road that abuts 495, it was very clear you could put 5 what they call A&R lots, or approval not required lots, meaning the property owner submits a plan to the planning board. Even though it's called approval not required, the planning board votes to approve it, but it doesn't require a subdivision hearing or other. It's basically almost a by right division of the property in conformance with the town zoning. And it was very clear you could put 5 house lots there on that 6.5-acre parcel across the street. When Evan Belansky informed me that there was interest in this property and that it was going to be sold by the estate, I reached out to the then chair of the Conservation Commission to inquire whether this parcel would have any benefit for conservation or open space purposes. At that time, the chair was Carl Bischoff. He informed me that yes, the land did have considerable conservation value. And so that's when basically I initiated the process that brings us to here this evening. We sort of had this situation where the town was going into it as any other bidder. The estate had issued a call for offers, which is a document that was put out there. It was advertised on multiple listing and other sources, and sealed bids were to be submitted with a deadline of May 3rd. I approached the Community Preservation Commission, went to Linda Prescott, and as many of you are familiar, the Community Preservation Commission consists of various constituencies of the town: Conservation Commission, Housing Authority, Select Board, residents, and so forth. And they approved the funding to get an appraisal so that the town could submit an offer for the land. And why that is significant is under the state law that provides for the Community Preservation Fund and the surcharge that's based into your property tax system, the town can only pay fair value as determined by appraisal processes. And so basically that became what was to be our proposal, because we didn't have a right of first refusal that you would under chapter land saying, okay, you've got a bona fide offer to sell the land, the town has the first right of refusal to buy it. In this case, there was no right of first refusal. We were going in basically with a determination of cost for the town's interest of, well, let's get an appraisal done and let's submit an offer based upon that appraisal. So the appraisal was engaged. We engaged Minuteman Appraisal, which is the same appraisal firm that assisted us with the Warren Poll conservation purchase a few years back. The appraiser, went out, didn't just take the conceptual plan as given. He worked with engineers and determined that, no, we don't think that you can get 21 lots in there based upon the topography and wetlands and such in the property. We think a more realistic number was 18 lots. And that matters, because think about it, if you're valuing a house lot on a subdivision, 3 lots, significant in today's market. So the appraisal is based on an 18 subdivision lots. That appraisal came back. Obviously, the Community Preservation Committee met and authorized the submittal of a proposal. We worked with Town Council. We submitted an offer for the properties, and then we waited for the results. Several weeks came by. We were notified that the sellers through the court, that was selling it for the estate, wanted to engage the town. And the reason we believe that they wanted to engage the town is because the town's offer, as opposed to a private developer, is more efficient and for the interest of the sellers. And let me explain, well, what does that mean, more efficient? Well, one is the town has solid financing, right? You don't have a question. The town has the community preservation funding, you know, and the, you know, the ability to incur debt under the community preservation fund. So we didn't have a contingency on financing. So that's the first consideration in terms of the other side of the equation. The other equation is because the town's not proposing to develop the property, it's advantageous to the seller because the town's not going to put an offer in based upon permits and approvals. Because if you're going to buy this land, and we see this because, you know, we're you know, whether it's through the planning board or being in the community, we know that land sales are often contingent upon permitting and approvals, and that takes time. So the town's offer isn't contingent on permitting and approvals because we're not going to develop the land. And so that's sort of a consideration as to why would somebody want to engage the town's offer if it's competitive with the other offers that are submitted. So based upon that, again, our offer was presented, went back to the Community Preservation Committee, notified the Select Board. We then proceeded with a purchase and sale agreement, which basically brings it here this evening, that allows the town meeting the opportunity to appropriate funds to proceed with this purchase upon the market value. So what this document here is the cover sheet of the appraisal that we had done on the three parcels. You can see it was done on April 1st. My guess would be the appraisal price, and we know that real estate prices have appreciated over the last 6 months, but since Jim Marchant's appraisal. And then I think this is the key. This was the conceptual subdivision plan that was included in the call for offers by the brokerage that was out there.
1 minute.
As you can see, something's going to happen to that land. It is going to be developed. If the town does not purchase this land, it will be developed. And it'll be developed in residential form. This parcel just shows you how the acquisition price, and it comes from the appraisal report, which is available on our website. Again, how it nets out from your real subdivision lot price minus you take into consideration the construction, soft costs, and so forth. The then final question, my last 30 seconds, is, well, what happens is if this is approved? We will form a resident committee, much like we did with Warren Poll, to determine how the community would use the property by getting your input. A restriction would then be put on the property. I again reiterate that this is one of the few remaining large privately held parcels in the town. It will be paid for over the next 15 years from the Community Preservation Fund's debt service, and we still will have sufficient capacity to address any future open space, historic preservation, or community housing projects that exist. On time. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 7.
The Select Board have a recommendation.
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 7 by a vote of 4-0.
It's your opportunity for questions, discussion.
Good evening. I'm Susan Tanner from Precinct 2. I have questions for Paul, please. Really clarification.
Sure.
Thank you. The agreed purchase price for the properties A, B, C, and D, D being the Hunt Road property, is $4,113,900. Their appraised value for properties, the parcels A, B, and C equal $4,063,900. The appropriation is for $4,163,900. There's a $50,000 difference, A, and then B, there's no appraisal for the parcel D on Hunt Road, which is valued at $172,800 in terms of what the purchase price is. So if you could just clarify that, I'd be greatly appreciative.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Moderator. The reason for the $50,000 there is we are requested on these projects to put in costs for legal costs, other costs related to the closing of the sale of the property. whether we want to do environmental assessments or other aspects of it. So we have the appropriation, and as you noted correctly, the actual acquisition will be $50,000 less. But we do have what we call soft cost, transaction costs that the town incurs during this. So that's the $50,000 differential. The question about the fourth parcel, as you correctly noted, was not included in the original appraisal because it was added during the process by the court. There was a motion by one of the heirs to incorporate the fourth parcel into the sale. I then brought that back to the Community Preservation Committee and said, folks, this is the request. Do you wish to add that, to move forward? And the request was yes. They did. As he said, it's assessed at $172,800. And basically, at that point, the simplest thing to do was to go with the assessed value, which we know the appraised value would probably be greater than the assessed value, but it didn't make sense to go get, nor did we have the time to go get an appraisal on that one parcel that's assessed at $173,000.
Okay, thank you. I have just one more question, please. And thank you for providing this information. The Community Preservation Fund real property acquisition price restrictions says that no such real property or interest therein shall be acquired by any city or town for a price exceeding the value of the property as determined by such city or town through procedures customarily accepted by the appraising professional as valid. So our appraisal value is less than the purchase value. So that means we're not meeting those guidelines, if I'm understanding them correctly, because the assessed value is actually this is just for A, B, and C, $3,930,000. We're buying the property, including D, for $4,113,900. So that doesn't make sense. If I'm not, I could be not interpreting what I'm the
Sure.
guidelines.
If you look at the purchase and sale agreement, which I believe you have.
Yep, I have.
It shows you how each one of those parcels is broken off
It
into
does.
the purchase sale agreement. And as you correctly noted, all of the first three parcels are noted for their appraised value. And then the last parcel is, as noted, is for the assessed value, which again, the assessed value in this case does not exceed the appraised value to the best of our knowledge, and it would be accepted for what we'd call a de minimis real estate parcel of $173,000. That would not prevent us from acquiring on it. And I can turn that over to Town Council Paul Haverty if you wish to have a legal opinion on that.
If I could just add, so the parcels A, B, and C total from the appraised value, the $3,930,000.
Right.
But if you look at just the itemized purchase prices for those, it's the $4,063,900. So we're over the appraised value, right?
No.
I'm not understanding it, then I apologize.
Maybe council can help.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. To the previous speaker, the way that the value is being calculated here is based upon the appraisal of the three lots, and then the fourth lot is based upon its assessed value. And taken together, that's where you get the purchase price.
I understand that. The appraised value of the three properties is $3,930,000. That's directly from the appraisal report. That's for parcels A, B, and C. Okay, that's $3,930,000.
Okay?
And we're purchasing minus the $173,000 for D, the purchase price is in excess of the appraisal.
Right.
No, it's not the soft costs. The soft costs don't equal that difference.
Confused.
Right, but you're adding the fourth parcel, which gets you to the acquisition cost. So
Even without that, it
No.
is more.
No, it isn't. I mean, I have the appraisal in front of me, and I have the purchase and sale agreement. I can read from those amounts, but They are, the,
The appraised value for A is $2,500,000. The appraised value for B is $1,360,000. And C is $31,100.
right. And then you add D, which is $172,800, that comes out to the purchase price of $4,113,900.
That's not what I'm sorry, that's not what in doing the math, that's not what I get. When you add those together, you're not getting you're getting less than the purchase price. I'm sorry to be holding up the meeting like this. D is $172,800. $172,800. The appraised price for A, B, and C. There was no appraisal for D.
Yeah, but 3,900,000. You still get the same, right?
It's just a point of clarification, that's all. It's not an argument.
We went over this I can tell you, we've gone over, we as
sure
meeting at the
you
time of the
have.
purchase and sale and such,
I'm
went
sure
over
you
this
have.
repeatedly. 2550.
I apologize.
It's okay. You're getting
3,930.
What am I missing?
Yeah, plus those are just the appraisal values for A, B, and C. We don't have an appraisal for D. So even if, they did not.
The assessed value.
I know. This is what, from the appraisal.
Why don't you say something? But 4 million,
What am I missing?
63,000.
Okay, no, I mean, I'm just,
Kelly Beatty for Chelmsford Telemedia. The issue here is whether
I don't
the
understand which,
appraised, the amount of money that is being asked for in this
That's
warrant
not the-
article
that's the
equals the
appropriation, not the
appraisal
purchase.
of the four parcels.
No, it's not Article 8.
Plus a
It's
certain
not-
amount
has
of
nothing
money,
to do with
roughly
Article 8.
$50,000
Has
to
has
cover
do
the
with-
town's
it-
needs to make sure that the property isn't contaminated or something like that. And so when you add all those numbers up, I just added them up, and honestly, I get a number that's $50,000 less than the $4.164 million that's being requested. And as you can see by the discussion taking place, there does not seem to be any unanimity here in the room as to which numbers are correct. Town Manager Paul Cohen is checking the purchase and sale agreement.
It's 4063. We're buying $4,150,000.
Again, the four properties have different values. The largest one, the 25 acres, is $2.5 million.
We're good. I understand. It's was not taking out the 50,000 again
Yes.
from the purchase price. I knew that all the appraisal amounts were less, but I wasn't taking that out. So I have one more question for you.
Okay.
There's an existing structure on A. And will there be funds allocated for the demolition of that property, of the existing structure? And what will they, have you projected what those costs might be?
The answer is no. As I stated in my presentation, we've not decided upon a use for the property.
Okay.
That's how we'll form a resident committee to decide how all the parcels will be used. I think, as we noted, it really is the two main parcels, because parcel 3, the wet parcel, there's no use, it's wet.
Right.
And I don't believe we entertain much on parcel 4, but parcels 1 and 2 may have different uses and different restrictions upon them, but we need to decide as a community what we wish to use those for. So, for example, we may want to go with open space on parcel A, the large parcel, that shows this area over here, and then for walking trails, a parking area, farms, what have you, and then it may be a totally different use for this parcel across the street, the 6.5 acre parcel. Give me an example. When we talked about this at the information session last Wednesday, we've heard interest expressed to the town during this process by Weston Nurseries. Weston Nurseries, as you may know, is a couple parcels down the roadway. They lease their parcels from the Parley family, and they also lease the parcel across the street from the other Parley family. And they expressed and contacted me as this project moved forward, that they may have an interest in leasing this parcel here from the town for agricultural purposes, to expand their agricultural activities. I've also had interest on this 6.5 acre parcel for active recreation. There are people who've approached me saying, geez, Paul, we'd like to have additional recreational opportunities, whether that's pickleball, whether that's additional playing fields, what have you. Again, so that's really where we need the community input to decide what we want to do with that parcel, and over here as well. So no, I'm not asking money to raise the structure on the property. I can tell you, in the discussions we had over the last several months, we did reach out to Linda Prescott, who chairs the Community Preservation Committee, who's, as you know, is on the Historical Committee, and Deb Taverna. They tell us that this home has no historical significance. So therefore, unlike a Red Wing Farm situation, when the town acquired Red Wing Farm, the town wanted to preserve the historical significance of that structure. They actually broke off a portion, sold it privately, and as many of you know, Bob Morse owns and resides in that home, and then preserved the remaining land for open space. At this point, we've not done that because we haven't had that community discussion, and that's why we want to do this after the town, if the town so chooses to authorize and appropriate the monies to move forward. We would then have that community input on how the lands and parcels should be used, including the structure. And that was very similar to what we did with Warren Pole. After the Warren Town Meeting authorized the acquisition of the Warren Pole property, a committee was formed, there was input provided. In that case, there was consultation with the sellers of the property, the Warren and the Pole family, in terms of what their preference was, and we tended to take deference to their preference for that use. Here, we don't have that constraint. We have an estate that obviously is looking to maximize the revenue from the property, and obviously they're fractured, which is what brought this to a court managed sale. And so I think we have more independence here, but the end result is the community will decide, and how that will work is the select board would appoint would work and be that governing body where a committee would be appointed, report back to the select board, and if they whatever they want to do here, if it involves an appropriation of monies or a change of use of the land from open space to active recreation, whatever, it's got to come to this town meeting body, because that's going to take significant funding, whether it's creating fields or what have you. So at this point, again, we're only at the stage of acquisition, because if the town doesn't secure the asset, then we don't have those matters to decide. And I certainly wasn't going to come here. One, we didn't have the time, nor would I take the audacity of basically telling the community how this property is going to be utilized. We want the community's input onto how this land should be used and preserved. And again, I think we've shown that track record with the Warren Pole property.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you for the math lesson.
Sue Carter, Precinct 11. I have questions and then debate. Should I go back to the end of the line before debate? Or-
No.
Okay.
You ask your questions, then you'll have 3 minutes.
Then I'll tell you. Okay. First of all, I need to disclose that I'm a professional engineer, and my office was asked to do the conceptual plan on this, but we did not end up doing the work because we had too many time commitments in my office. Any of my comments tonight are based on information readily available in the public record or my personal knowledge or talking to people in the neighborhood. So I am not disclosing or asking anything about proprietary information for this site. My first question is, I read the appraisal and they said there was no survey, wetlands flagging, soil testing or anything like that done on this site. So my question is, has the Conservation Commission or our agent gone out and walked it to see if the wetlands as represented on that concept plan are realistic?
I don't know if they have not. I do know that members of the Conservation Commission have been on this property and have looked at vernal pools and other aspects of it, but that's not been done, nor did we do that with Warren Pole. No,
Okay.
we took the conceptual plan.
Has the Board of Health or anyone else been out there to walk the site and look at the site to see whether or not visually it looks reasonable for 18 septic systems on that site?
No, we've not had the Board of Health go out
Okay.
there, and again, that's not the process that we followed,
Okay.
even with Warren Pole.
Has anybody looked in detail at that concept plan that was given to the appraiser? Because from all his disqualifying statements on that concept, it's basically a pretty cartoon. Has anybody from the town critically looked at it to see if it is reasonable to get that number of lots per that concept plan?
Yes. When we were going through this process, we utilized our town engineer and our engineering folks, and we were in consultation with the appraiser in terms of what we thought could go out there. And as I noted in our presentation, the concept plan from Beals Associates was for 21 lots. Examining the topography and the wetland areas that are out there, it was our best estimate that realistically it's probably 18 lots that could be constructed out there with the topography that's out there. We also worked with our engineering firm,
Beals
Katie Enright,
Associates.
with Katie Enright, Howard Stein Hudson, to look at the road configuration and costs and so forth there. So we did take consultation there to make sure that the costs we were looking at were within line. So that's the work that we did do, but no, we didn't do septic or borings or that type of stuff for septic systems. Again, that's not something that the town has ever done, whether it was Sheehan Farm, this property, or Warren Pole, or others. We don't go to that level of diligence. We do the best that reasonable can be expected, and as I noted, if you're looking at knocking down 3 house lots, which we did, and if the house lots are valued at $300,000, we believe that gave a fair representation of what the market yield could be. But yes, there is uncertainty, and that's why all appraisers couch their appraisals in uncertainty. Yes.
I'd like to go to debate. I'm a professional engineer, and doing site development and concept plans are what I've been doing for the past 40 years. I probably designed hundreds of septic systems. And when I look at this, could you please put up the concept subdivision plan? Is there any way to zoom in at all?
No.
So all of the lots that are on the left side of the road are on a very steep slope. Title V for a septic system requires you to have 6 feet of naturally occurring material. With those grades in a house just at the setback, I also checked soils maps. The soils there are glacial till, they're a type C soil, so they would require a very large septic system, and in my opinion, I don't think those lots are buildable at all. Second of all, we have lots that are further down and around the wetland area. When a subdivision is designed, you need area for stormwater. We have our stormwater bylaw. We are required to not only attenuate water, we have water quality issues. We have to deal with phosphorus removal. I honestly doubt that you could get this number of lots. And in my estimation, you could lose at least 5 to 8 lots easily with soil testing on this site. I think buying it is a good thing for the town, but not at this price. If it had been worth this amount of money, a developer would have snatched it up so fast the second it came on the market. I honestly think it's probably worth half of what we're paying for it. And therefore, I am voting no in the hopes that no one else buys this property and perhaps there's room for negotiations in the future. I agree with buying open space. I think the 5 lots between Pine Hill Road and 495 are viable, but do we really want to pay $4.1 million to prevent 5 house lots? Maybe 8. And the reason why I say maybe 8 is because on the other side of the roadway, that's a lot of road to build for not a lot of yield. A developer looks at how many lots they get per linear feet of road, and I'm just thinking that the numbers are just going to disappear once you start putting reality on that site with real wetlands locations. Many times they're different than what's on GIS, significantly different, and real soil testing. I spoke to Henry Parley. He's the adjacent farmer. He knows the site well. He says there's a lot of ledge on that steep slope, and the water is high. He does not think it's a viable site for a large development like this. Thank you. I urge you to vote no.
Jeff Miller, Precinct 3, to the speaker. She pretty much took my thunder, but there is no sewer capacity for this project, correct?
That is correct.
So in the appraisal, they never took into account engineering, testing, or any of that stuff?
That's incorrect. The report took into effect the engineering, testing, and other costs that would be required
For
as part of
septic
this.
approvals?
Yes, that's in the appraisal. That was included in the analysis. And he also didn't take into the fact of the consideration of possibly a cluster development, which could also increase your lot yield. So that wasn't done either. This was on a straight subdivision. And again, mind you, this is the Beals report. This is not the towns which knocked this, because we also didn't support this plan. But we just showed you to depict what was put out there on the market. We also knocked off house lots because we didn't think that was viable. But yes, all those costs were factored in. Legal, engineering, carrying costs, profit, all that was carried into the appraisal analysis.
Yeah, but I don't think it's correct, because being in the business for 40-something years, there's a lot more involved in this, and if lots don't get approved for septic, they're not a lot. There's no way you can do it, and if it's too close to the wetlands, it's not a lot. And with the highway being right there, it's not a viable site for a developer. I'm all for the town buying it, but not at an exorbitant price. I just think that it's overpriced, and we should look into that. I mean, I don't see developers, it's on the market for a while. I looked at it. As soon as I found out there was no sewer capacity, like all the projects you're talking about were back when we had sewer capacity. We don't have that anymore. Everything's septic now. And if septic doesn't pass, it's glacial till and ledge. The septic is going to be $50,000, $60,000 a piece. It's not going to work for a developer. I just don't want to see the town get into something and overpay for it. I mean, everybody's entitled to make money on their property. They've been paying taxes on it. I understand that. I'm not a don't build zone. I just don't like overpay. And if we're going to pay for it, let's pay for what it's worth, not overworth. That's it.
Phil Stanway, Precinct 5. I looked at this and it just doesn't, this is debate, by the way. I'm not happy with it. There's a lot of debris out there. There's collapsed buildings out there. There are 50-gallon drums out there. There's a house that you don't know what's in it. There's just too much unknowns. If it had been tested, if it had been cleared, and we knew what we were buying, I would say, yeah, $4 million's way over what we should be paying, but I could take it. But the open-ended costs on what could be in there, what we don't know about, which we won't find until we start digging it up, and the cost just to remove all the debris out there. The collapsed barns, the 50-gallon drums, the old cars, what's underneath them. So it's just too many unknowns for me. So I'm going to say no on this. The other two parcels, fine. But this one with the house on and the old bonds, no. So I say I'm going to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the town manager. What was the tax assessment on this property pre-offer?
I mean, what is it assessed at?
Rough
What
value.
is the property assessed at?
What was the
Assessed
property?
value for parcel 1 is $703,300. Parcel 2 is $390,200. Parcel 3 is $31,100. And parcel 4 is $172,800.
So about $1.5 million value, more or less?
Yes, because the parcels are not subdivided or A&R lots. That's correct.
And we would arguably be paying 4.1 million, even though we assessed it at 1 point something.
That's not uncommon with the sales analysis of anything that's happened in the town, whether it's private or the town's involvement. You know, people shake their head saying, well, wait a minute, how does this land then sell for all this? We only assess the land how it's currently held. We don't assess property on its development capability. So, for example, that parcel that's 6 acres, we don't assess it as 5 A&R lots. We assess it as one parcel. So, yes, your answer is true, but I'm trying to explain why that.
So our homes are not assessed at market value?
If you owned an additional, if you had the ability to break off a separate lot from your home or lots from your home or at vacant land, we do not assess the town, not just Chelmsford, but any community in the Commonwealth, do not assess the property on its development capability. It's based upon its taxable capability, which is, again, if they then file a subdivision plan and break it into 5 lots, it will be taxed as 5 lots. But until that land action has occurred, no community in the Commonwealth can tax it that way.
Okay. This design on here doesn't initiate that?
No, this is a conceptual plan.
And
It's held in its entirety as it's currently assessed for. And again, you go to any parcel of that size or any size in the community, we do not assess land on its development capability.
Okay, and could this be, I know we're going to be talking about MBTA associated or adjacent community, could this 26 plus acres roll into that MBTA community concept so we could devour this part of what I was hearing earlier, very poor development possibilities? Could it be set up for an overlay district?
No, the motion is to acquire the land for open space purposes. The town can't submit conservation or open space land as compliance efforts for the MBTA zoning.
Okay. And
because it would get rejected by the state as being non-responsive, so it's not that we couldn't submit it.
So we didn't look at that property for the purposes of the MBTA community as...
No, and also it doesn't really meet many of the criteria of the MBTA zoning in terms of on a transit route and so forth. So it really wouldn't meet many of those criteria. And if you look at what the MBTA parcels are looked at, they're looking at parcels like the UMass West Campus, which is on a transit route. They're looking at others that are generally they tend to be central to a community, walking distance and so forth.
Okay.
This is not that.
And the town just paved the road in front of this property. Was that in preparation for this, or have we had this on the list for a long time?
We've had this on a list for quite some time, but
And then school needs, with the additional population and the additional people coming into the country and our community, would this be a property that the town might consider using for a new school, elementary school?
I don't envision the issue of using this land for a school. I think your school impact is going to be the opposite. If the land gets developed, you're going to have the impact in the school from the people who are buying $1 million houses, 4 bedrooms, who are going to put kids into the school. But this is not a piece of land that's going to be used to construct a site for a school. As you know, the trend in the community and the trend would likely to be to maintain the campus focus of our school location. So that's why the application that's submitted now is for the Parker School site, not a remote site like this.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, I'm in debate now. I think this property it's interesting from a community point of view. It's nice that there's a house on it that we haven't looked at to see if there's any chemicals or spills or any real purpose in terms of building this kind of community over there. I'm concerned about the MBTA community, where we're going to add population to our town if we let the state do that to us. And I'm looking and saying, well, maybe that's a property that we could use for that purpose, and apparently it doesn't seem to be that way. I'd like to remind the body that we bought historic houses before. 101 Mill Road comes to mind, where we sold it at quite a loss. I'd hate to see us putting $4.1 million on a $1.5 million property. I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Duffett, Precinct 5. You can start the clock, please. I'm a strong proponent of this, and I think the previous speakers have made some very interesting comments about costs. The one thing that hasn't been addressed, which should be very, very significant to everybody in this room, is opportunity cost. This is an opportunity for all of us to have 40 acres of land that is not developed. It's paid for by the Preservation Committee Fund, and I think if you look through the town, you'll see that we have less and less and less buildable space. So, and our citizens are saying no to further development. They want to retain the charm and history of our community, and I think that the citizens would want you to preserve, to protect this area and grasp that opportunity cost. Because what you have now in your hand is a guaranteed purchase of 40 acres that will perhaps be used for entertainment, be walking, maybe it will be just beautiful trails, maybe it will be hay fields. We don't know, but that is an opportunity that is never going to happen again. Because if you do not vote yes for this, then someone will develop it. And maybe it won't be exactly the 18 houses, who knows what it will be. But it's a wish and a whim here. Oh, I don't like the price, but I know I could do it better than everybody else. Ooh, look, I'm smart. I know something better than everybody else. It's gonna be this. This is a guarantee, 40 acres of space for our community, and I really suggest and hope that someday we're all not driving by there saying, oh, this space with all these clustered homes here, Millionaire Alley, it used to be a beautiful field and a farm, but now it doesn't represent Chelmsford at all because some few people thought that they knew the price better. Guaranteed 40 acres, preservation. That's the function. Thank you.
Carl Bischoff, Precinct 4. I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission. I'm also a member of the Community Preservation Committee. This property falls, you can start the clock. This property falls within the values of what we've set up with community preservation 20 years ago when we adopted the Community Preservation Act. It fits in our master plan, it fits in our open space and recreation plan. The property does have a lot of conservation value. It has habitat for wildlife. There is likely a vernal pool there. There's a lot of opportunity for wildlife in the area. This is not a contiguous property with any of our other conservation properties. However, I look at it as more of a stepping stone for wildlife in the way they move around our town. And if we took this away and turned it into a development, it would be a much bigger gap for wildlife, and that wouldn't be good. Open space, as the previous speaker said, is less and less and less. If this goes away, we don't have another chance at this. I have spoken with Donna Koulis, one of the members of the family. She said that the property was managed by her father in a very green manner. He was green before organic farming was a thing. He didn't have chemicals on the property. He forbid it other than fuel for the tractors and for the vehicles on the property. There are a lot of vehicle carcasses on the property. I have walked the property. It's really got a lot of value. It does have a lot of issues that need to be cleaned up. I think we have an article coming up to help address some of that, if I'm not mistaken. I believe we need to secure this property, and then we can then determine how to use it. Based on the cost, we bought the Warren Pole property 3 years ago. When you look at, assuming this appraisal is reasonable, lot for lot, this is actually, price-wise, it's very similar. It's in the same general range. The Warren Pole property was 54 acres, but you could only get, I think it was 7 or 8 lots buildable on that property. So we got it for just about $1 million. So this is actually tracking very similar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Chris Garahan, Precinct 3. Yeah, I'm strongly support this article. Honestly, it's community preservation. That's why we have the Community Preservation Act. And there's only a very few, if any, properties left in this town of this size, 41 acres of space, that we have the opportunity tonight to be able to protect it, protect this land in perpetuity. And I had a constituent come up to me just the other day around town and said to her the choice was simply like, do we want more development, more people, more kids going to school, or do we want to have open space and preserve the kind of country-like perspective that we have in this town? It's really that choice. And so we have the opportunity tonight to be able to take that vote for community preservation, for preserve open space. I urge the reps to make that choice tonight so that this land is not developed in the future. We can close that out tonight by preserving it forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Clancy, Precinct 2. A couple questions through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Speaker. Were there other offers presented at the call for offers for this property?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, if I may, if I could ask the permission of town meeting, I have the court petitioner in the room this evening, Dominic Aiello, and I also have the broker who worked with the court petitioner, Bob Cronin, who can address the offers and the sale of the property, if they would be allowed to speak and answer the question this evening.
So in order for non-residents to speak, town meeting has to vote to approve them. So if you want to get the information from these two individuals, we're just going to do a hand vote, and if you don't, I'll give you an opportunity to raise your hands as well. So if you're in favor of letting the broker and the other individual, okay, and if you're opposed, one person. Okay, we're going to allow those two people to vote, to speak.
Dom, if you could come to the front podium here and address the information. Bob, you're welcome to come with him as well.
My name is Dominic Aiello, and I was appointed by the Land Court as the partition commissioner responsible for selling this land. And my obligation was to place this on the market, which I did through Mr. Bob Cronin at Collier's. And my obligation was to sell for the highest possible price. So as has been mentioned, there was a call for offers that was prepared by Collier's with subdivision plans that went out. And in addition, Mr. Cronin can testify better than I can, but he also contacted his extensive network of brokers and developers, placed this on the open market, and MLS listing, I should say, and a number of offers came in. As Mr. Cohen had said, the town's offer made the best sense from the point of view of the estate, of the owners, because of the town's price and its ability to pay without conditions for having subdivision plans approved, bank financing, that kind of thing. So that is what the process was, and if anybody has any questions in terms of what we did in order to arrive at the agreement with the town, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you, Don.
Mr. Clancy, did you have any questions?
I did. So my question was, were there other offers that came in, and what value were they?
Yes, there were other offers that came in, and none of them nearly as favorable as the town. There was one outfit that offered, I'm sorry.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, sure.
Bob Cronin from Colliers International in Boston. I think it's best to answer that question by just reading the list without identifying the specific bidders, but it'll give you a good idea as to, and I've been doing this for 40 years, and you know, my specialty is land, so I see a lot of these types of, you know, competitive situations, you know, play out, and it all comes down to, you know, risk and reward. And I think this one, clearly the town of Chelmsford came out with, by far and away, the cleanest offer of all. So let me start with the bottom offer and work my way up to the top, but there is some need for clarification in terms of the offers themselves. The first offer that came in is actually from a group that wanted to use it. It was a user buyer, let's call them. They were an open nursery type operator. The requirements for this bid were, you know, it had to be, you know, a cash transaction, or it had to be you know, a demonstration of financeability on the project that's being proposed. And I think in the case of that particular offer, it did address those points, but it was for the smaller parcel. That was $1.4 million for the 6.5 acre parcel. The next offer on the list was $1.475 for the 25 acre parcel, exclusive of the other parcels. And that was for a farm operation. It was for someone who may be in the room tonight, I'm not sure, because I think he's an operator within the town right now, and he wanted to expand his current farm operation that exists. That was an all-cash offer, 60 days, $15,000 deposit. A builder offered $1,500,000 for the 6.5 acre parcel, thinking that he contingent on building or getting approved five A&R lots that Paul had alluded to earlier. And his was also subject to bank financing in the amount of 70%. 14-day due diligence period. He'll close in 14 days after all due diligence and securing all permits and approvals. $50,000 deposit, 120 days due diligence. And there's no question that there's due diligence required on this site, as other speakers have indicated. But the fact that it's, you know, an open space use, you know, I'm not sure that it's applicable if you're going to be building a 40B apartment or, you know, single-family homes on the site. The next offer is for $2,160,000, which was an offer which was subject to permits and approvals for 18 single-family lots, subject to bank financing, even though they did submit a proof of funding, or at least a letter of commitment from a bank. 180-day closing from the purchase and sale agreement. A $25,000 deposit. Due diligence, full permits and approvals, which I think realistically you're probably looking at an 18-month timeline by the time you start your due diligence, you close, and then you file for your permits and approvals. So that, you know, that's a fairly long timeline in a market that happens to be heading, you know, in a different direction, you know, from a financing standpoint. Interest rates, residential real estate is pretty flat right now. And, you know, the general consensus is it's going to be flat for a while until we can get our issues squared away globally. The next offer was from an apartment development group, just the 25 acres, offering $3,625,000 to build 125 apartments on this site. And, you know, not stated in terms of financing, which means they don't have any financing lined up. 120 days from the purchase and sale agreement, a $20,000 deposit, which are kind of, you know, liquidated damages after 6 months or 18 months. You don't get your permits and approvals, you walk away, and, you know, your only liability or exposure is your out-of-pocket, you know, or your $20,000 deposit, or plus your $20,000 deposit that you left, you know, on the table. So that gets us to the town of Chelmsford. And, you know, I think if you take their offer, the fact that it's an all-cash offer, it's subject to, you know, a 60-day, 90-day closing, due diligence, no due diligence period, as Paul had indicated. It's really kind of a no-brainer, if you will, that, you know, this particular office, given the fact that there's really no plans to get involved in a development on this site that's going to have the potential impacts that, whether it's residential, whether it's senior housing, you know, whether it's 40B apartments, whether it's tied into the MBTA, you know, it's not. So that, you know, this is a really clean offer, which, you know, I appreciate the young lady's comments about, you know, opportunity, because this is clearly opportunity. There are so few lots left in the town, and I think that when we started looking at the sale comps, and even the appraiser started looking at the sale comps, there's so few properties that have traded because it's a supply and demand. Land doesn't exist. So if you want to do a pickleball, people smirk when they hear about pickleball, but, you know, I mean, you look at that 6.5 acre parcel. I mean, I'm very familiar with Wellesley, where we had a Catholic church on Route 9 that, you know, everyone drove by a couple of times a day. They announced that they were closing it, and who could have imagined that the town would buy it and build a hockey rink on it? And, you know, it's just a tremendous resource for the community, and someone had, you know, the vision that this is a lost opportunity unless we step up. Are we overpaying? You know, that's a matter of you know, definition. So, I mean, we have a saying that, you know, it's worth what the market will pay. I mean, appraisals are appraisals, but the real test of a value is what, you know, a ready, willing, and able buyer would pay for an asset.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm happy to share all of this information, and, you know, we have...
Mr. Cronin, I think you answered the question that was asked, which was...
Maybe more so.
Yeah, I think so. Are there any more questions for the broker or the attorney? Yeah. Okay, Mr. Clancy.
Excuse me. Sure. Mr. Speaker, through you, Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, is there any information regarding potential concerns regarding contamination on the site?
Mr. Moderator, I think that could best be answered by another party that's in attendance this evening. We have Attorney Michael Rosen, who represents one of the heirs of the Coolis family, and he has direct information that can talk about the environmental testing that's been done on the site, as well as the plans by the family to remove vehicles and other prior to the sale closing on the property. So.
Okay. Again,
You have the permission.
we need to vote on Attorney Rosen. All in favor? Any opposed? One. Okay. Counsel?
Good evening. My name is Michael Rosen. I'm counsel for George Chanis, and this evening here representing the Koulis family on this matter. I'm sorry, Joe.
A question about the environmental testing on the site and the plans to clean the remove vehicles and such prior to closing.
So I can answer two questions, both of those. The first is that there was a comprehensive environmental examination done, I believe in late 2018 or early 2019, and the environmental assessment came back. No additional findings necessary. The property is in compliance with the MCP under the residential standard, which is the higher standard. As far as vehicles on the property, I can represent that, in fact, the various parties have been negotiating because they all belong to somebody, and it is their intention to remove their vehicles. There are some trailers out there. There's actually an antique Porsche out there, and the parties whose vehicles are sitting out there do intend to remove those vehicles prior to the closing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One final question. Mr. Moderator, through you to one of the previous speakers, is there a need to modify the warrant in order to proceed with the purchase of this property?
You need to modify the warrant?
I'm sorry, excuse me, the warrant from the court.
Oh, the warrant from the court. Oh,
Okay.
that would be, no, that would be from,
Sorry.
Oh, hi, this is Dominic Aiello again. No, the warrant has been approved, and the court has approved the sale, subject to passage in the town meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, all set.
Thank you.
Joseph Reddy, Precinct 8. He talked about doing a 21, did they do an actual 21E on the actual property of all 4 parcels?
The environmental examination was done on the large parcel.
all right, yeah, we're not aware of any other issues or activity on the other 3 parcels.
Correct.
Yeah.
So my understanding of a 21E Phase 1 is just that it's a historical evaluation of the parcel, knowing that it's residential. But if you walk that parcel, and the reason I bring this up is I was probably the highest credible bidder on that project, or on that property. And one of the things I would have done is done an extensive 21E evaluation of it, because when you look at the actual parcel, there are a lot of 50-gallon drum barrels that are sitting there rotted out. My concern is that this is close to Chelmsford Water Department land, and if we purchase this property, are we going to be taking on problems that we could be battling with the town over?
The question is what's the question?
Well, I think about like Richardson Road, right? We're in talks with the with the North Chelmsford Water Department over PFAS and things of that nature. Would it behoove us to do some sort of evaluation of this parcel so that if it does have some sort of contamination that we don't know about, we're not then later spending money to clean it up?
Go ahead.
So just a point of clarification, I believe the bidder or the town meeting representative indicated that we did a Phase 1. We did not do a Phase 1. We did an environmental examination, and that included 36 borings and samplings, testing the surface as well as beneath the surface, identifying all of the areas of concern that an environmental engineer would identify, and went throughout the property and targeted and identified areas from which to take soil samples, water samples, and do borings.
Is that information available to all town meeting representatives?
I'd want to confer with my clients on that to the extent that there are town meeting representatives that are bidders on the property and are interested in acquiring the property. I'd have to consider whether or not that information should be released.
My next question is, then I heard you say this at the end of your presentation, as part of the community preservation, it could turn into a community housing project. Could David Hedison bring some sort of 100% affordable housing project similar to what they did on 110? Could this inadvertently turn into hundreds of units of housing, which is what I think we're saying we don't want.
In order for that to come up, and the issue of housing has been raised before, that would require a return to town meeting for town meeting action. As I noted earlier, this motion talks about the use for open space purposes through the Community Preservation Fund. The Community Preservation Fund can be used for three purposes: open space, community housing, and historic preservation. The motion here this evening is for open space purposes, including an agricultural lease. If the town decided, as I said, if this is approved and the town secures the asset, and then with the community input and decides as a committee that they wish to use it for community housing purposes, and I did speak to David Hedison over 6 months ago to see if he had any interest in this property. He told me he did not have any interest. He did not see that he would have any financing ability in the foreseeable future to use this for the choice or his Chelmsford Housing nonprofit use. But if it were to be, that would have to require a return here to town meeting to change that use. So at this point, no. Subject to a town meeting vote to change the use from open space purposes, and that would be, again, prior to a preservation restriction being placed on the property, because similar to Coolest Farm or Sunny Meadow Farm or Sheehan Farm, what have you, once that preservation restriction is placed on the property, it's irrevocable. But at this point, no, there is no plans to develop this property for housing. Unless, again, the town decides and comes back here prior to the implementation of a restriction to do that.
I just want to say that if you look at all the bids, and I think, Collier's brought this up, I mean, basically, we're overpaying for this property significantly. I have no problem acquiring it, but I don't think we should acquire it at this price. And I think with the town being in real estate, having the ability to buy it essentially cash, being able to close on it without any sort of permitting, being able to waive all this due diligence that almost everybody else would do, I can't imagine why we put in a bid that was so much higher than everybody else. I'll leave it at that.
How would we?
No questions, just debate. So my name is Chris LaValle, Precinct 10, and also a planning board member. I'm not sure how many of you follow the planning board, but the A&Rs are pretty much brought to the planning board, and we have little to no control over whether they actually are approved. It's actually a weird process where they actually seek our approval and we have to give it to them. Approval not required. So we just heard from the previous speakers that the other top three bidders were all developers. Based on what I've seen at Planning Board, any developer wanting to develop open space like this will be developed, seek to put as many units on the property as they can to recoup their costs. So we at the Planning Board may or may not have control over that. Whereas at town meeting, we have control now. We talk about how Chelmsford is being overdeveloped. Why not take that chance now to say, we don't want the development in this location. Let's buy the property, keep it open space, then we don't have to worry about all of the planning board hearings that we're gonna have to go to fight how much development we want here. So let's just say no development, buy the property, and keep it open space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Clancy, Precinct 2. I have a question through you, Mr. Moderator, to the previous speaker, being the broker and attorney for the estate. If this is not approved this evening, is the plan to put it back out to bid or to go back to one of the previous bidders?
The plan would likely be to go back to more than one of the previous bidders. I think what you heard Mr. Cronin talk about is that there was an offer of $1.5 million for the A&R lots, which I think you just heard Mr. LaValle from the planning board say it's pretty much rubber stamp. In addition, there was a bidder who offered $3.625 million for looking at developing it as an apartment complex or seeing if there was other density that they could get on the site. So at the end of the day, we likely would reach back out to those two bidders. Collectively, that would produce $1.5 million in the near term and allow us to leverage a better deal that at the end of the day could produce a profit that would be $1 million above what the town is willing to pay. So that's a potential plan. We might also go back to the market and see what else we can find in the marketplace. Obviously, there's nothing set in stone yet. We're under contract with the town, and we're going to honor that contractual obligation we have with the town, so we have not spoken to anyone else, nor would we intend to unless and until this purchase and sale agreement is terminated.
Thank you.
If I could just mention on the question of valuation, which has been questioned, I just wanted to reiterate, as Mr. Cohen has mentioned, the town is subject to a statute that requires a fair market appraisal as a condition of using community development funds, and that's what they did. In behalf of the estate, I consulted with Mr. Cronin, and he in turn consulted with a colleague of his, a real estate appraiser with many years of experience. We reviewed the appraisal report, and we raised questions for the town in terms of one item in particular was whether road construction costs were excessive. The town in turn retained an engineering firm who came back with the report to say that the costs were in line. So what I mean to say here is that we followed the statutory process, and I think based upon that, this value represents the fair market value in accordance with the statute.
Thank you.
You can start the clock. So we've heard tonight the town has done its due diligence, maybe not as much as some people would like on a regular purchase for a commercial or residential property. We've heard that the valuations have been done through an appraisal as required by Massachusetts law. You have heard that the value has been set based upon fair market value because we can't have a situation in which we are offering, this is not a piece of property that's subject to statute where we would get a reduced first right of refusal on this. This is a piece of property, one of the largest left in town, that is still available for open space. And we've heard from the proponents of the article that this is a fair value to purchase it for. We've also heard from the estate, which is the seller, that if we do not proceed with this sale, that they are going to either return to the market, or they're going to return to the previous bidders, one of which is in this audience this evening. There are other offers out there. There are other people offering to purchase this property. I believe that the town should be the purchaser of this property this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Harrison Mayo, Precinct 7. I'd like to make a motion to move the question.
We have a motion to move the question. What that means is that if the town meeting votes to move the question, there will be no further debate on this issue, and you'll vote on that issue, and then we'll also vote on the consent agenda. So, Ted, can we have a vote on a motion to move the question? And hopefully with the other computer, we will have more accurate results, although I've been informed that the timer isn't working on this computer, but the results will be better. Or maybe the timer switches on and off. So if you have voted and it's not recording or it's recording inaccurately, please let us know immediately, but this should be good.
Again, this is a vote to move the question, that is to end debate. This is not a yes or no on the article itself, but simply a indication of whether or not people want to end debate. You see from the screen there that
are you having problems getting your votes on?
Relatively few of the clickers are registering. A lot of the town meeting reps are voting, but their votes are not being recorded. This is a vote to move the question, so it requires a simple majority.
So did anybody have a problem with their vote? Considerable number. We're going to have to possibly go through having the checkers count votes.
What he means by checkers is that
is unfortunate.
you'll raise your hand if you're a town meeting rep and your vote will be counted
Yeah,
manually.
We can try to do this by a show of hands if it looks like it's going to go one way or the other before we. I understand that. And clearly we're going to have to do something else. What I'm suggesting is that if you are in favor of moving the question, raise your hand and let me see if it's going to be close or if it's going to be one-sided. Okay, if you're opposed to moving the question, it's not even close, okay? And if anybody disputes my analysis, please let me know. Okay, so the next issue is, and I think we're going to need the checkers. We can't rely on the computer, I'm afraid, which is unfortunate, but we're going to go back to the days of yore when we would have people count your vote. Days of yore. That was before I was moderator. So we're going to arrange for the yes. So we have to get the counters in place.
Yes, the days of yore.
You mean on the 2/3?
Actually, the days of yore go back to when there was open town meeting here in Chelmsford.
Okay.
The first few years where I lived here,
what?
back in the 1980s.
Yeah. It has been suggested to me that, and this does require a 2/3 vote, that perhaps by looking at hands, we can determine whether it's 2/3 or not. I'm willing to give that a shot, but if I'm not satisfied that I can discern whether 2/3 are in favor or opposed to this, then we're going to have to do the other way. So if you are in favor of this warrant article and the purchase of this property, raise your hands. One second. Okay, thank you. If you are opposed, raise your hands. I don't think it's even close. I think it is clearly a 2/3 vote. All right? If anybody disputes that, we can take the time to count, but it seemed to me pretty overwhelmingly in favor. You want to count? Okay. Well, yeah, you know what? Okay, we're going to have the checkers do it since we have one individual who wants to have a count. It seems to me as though it's very clearly 2/3 in favor. Okay, are the counters in place? Okay. If you are in favor of this, one second, we're not ready yet. Not even close. Can we do a roll call? Okay, you know what? We're going to do a roll call, and we'll just do it that way. We have the list of everybody who's here, who has voted. And can we have the list of the people who are here?
Where's the clerk? Tricia.
Trish.
Why don't you do a roll call?
We're going to do a roll call.
Do you have the list of voters? Yes.
We're going to call every single person.
Go ahead.
Because someone wants us to do that, we'll do it. I'll call them out. You'll keep track.
This is Kelly Beatty. I have been covering town meetings for something like 30 years. I have never, ever seen a roll call vote at town meeting.
Ted, can we have the list of people who have previously voted on the screen? What? Yeah, I'm sure.
Understandably, town moderator John Curland has a challenge on his hand, trying to figure out the best way to record the vote. You saw that he took a show of hands. This requires a 2/3 majority, so there's some gray areas there. And although he ascertained that more than 2/3 were voting in favor of this warrant article,
okay,
it seems prudent to actually have a count for the record.
Okay, well, we'll go through one book and then we'll go through the other. You give me the name. 1 second, here we go. Karen Allen, are you in favor or opposed? Opposed?
Okay. Thomas Amiro.
Thomas Amiro. Favor.
Joanne Anderson.
Joanne Anderson. Opposed.
Nancy Arroway.
Nancy Arroway.
Tammy Arena.
Tammy Arena.
Pamela Armstrong.
Pamela Armstrong. In favor.
Colleen Arrington.
Colleen Arrington.
Fernand Bias.
Fernand Bias.
Ferdinand Bias.
Ferdinand Bias.
Oh, he's gone. Hannah Barker.
Hannah Barker.
Sarah Barnett.
Farrah Barnett.
Jennifer Battelle.
Jennifer Battelle.
Carl Bischoff.
Carl Bischoff.
And Karen Bischoff.
Karen Bischoff.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
What?
Go ahead. Keep going.
Helen Blaziel.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Helen opposed, okay. Christine Bowman.
Christine Bowman. Douglas Bruce.
John Byron.
John Byron.
Okay,
William
William Campbell.
Campbell.
Joellen Carkin.
Joellen Carkin.
Sue Carter.
Sue Carter.
Judy Carvin.
Judy Carvin.
Matthew Castle.
Matthew Castle. Jim Clancy. Anthony Coit.
I'm doing it by check-in.
Right, but we have two books.
We have two books. Yeah.
Well, someone wanted us to do a roll call, so we're doing it.
Right, Tracy Cole.
Tracy Cole.
Diane Colucci.
Diane Colucci.
Deirdre Connolly.
Deirdre Connolly.
Dean Controver.
Dean Controver.
Virginia Crocker Timmons.
Virginia Crocker Timmons. In favor.
Aaron Cunningham.
Yes.
Aaron Cunningham.
Deborah Daly.
Deborah Daly.
Gerard Daly.
Gerard Daly.
Scott Davidson.
Scott Davidson.
Sarah Davis.
Sarah Davis.
Deborah Deary.
Deborah Deary.
Albert Dick. Glenn Diggs.
Glenn Diggs.
Emily Dilworth.
Emily Dilworth. I'm sorry? Yes.
George Dixon.
George Dixon.
Alvin Draymond.
Alfred Draymond.
Opposed.
Aaron Drew.
Aaron Drew.
Kathy Duffett.
Kathy Duffett.
Thomas Fall.
Thomas Fall.
Teresa Feely.
Teresa Feely.
Richard Freitas.
Richard Freitas.
Christopher Garahan.
Chris Garahan.
Dante Gillis.
Dante Gillis.
William Gillette.
William Gillette.
Cynthia Goodland.
Cynthia Goodland.
Rebecca Gore.
Rebecca Gore.
David Gosselin.
David Gosselin. David?
You had to think about it.
Okay.
Susan Graves.
Susan Graves.
Sean Griffin.
Sean Griffin.
Sherman Horton III.
Sherman Horton III.
Jeffrey Hoyt.
Jeffrey Hoyt.
Liz Hyranovich. Elizabeth Hyranovich.
Elizabeth Haranovich. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name.
Claire Janot.
Claire Janot.
Gerald Kaplan.
Gerald Kaplan.
Elaine Kaplan.
Elaine Kaplan. Sean Kenny.
Dennis King.
Dennis King.
Richard Lemontano.
Richard LaMontagne.
Jim Lane.
Jim Lane.
Rena Lenoy.
Rena Lenoy.
Brian Latina.
Brian Latina.
Randy Leach.
Randy Leach.
And Ken LaFave.
Ken Lefebvre.
Joel Luna.
Martin Luna.
Joel. And Ruth Luna.
Ruth Luna.
We got a long way to go. Eric Mass.
Eric Mass.
Susan McKinnon.
Susan McKinnon.
In favor. Steve Mayer.
Steve Mayer.
Helen Manahan.
Helen Manahan.
Robert Mayotte.
Robert Mayotte.
Michael McCall.
Michael McCall.
Christine McNamara.
Christine McNamara.
Jeffrey Merrill.
Jeffrey Merrill.
Jeffrey Miller.
Jeffrey Miller.
Ruth Monahan.
Ruth Monahan.
Charles Mooney.
Charles Mooney.
Stacy Mulholland.
Stacy Mulholland.
Janet Murphy.
Janet Murphy.
Okay, Sarah Neal.
Sarah Neal.
Donna Newcomb.
Donna Newcomb.
Sean O'Connell.
Sean O'Connell.
Zachary Phillips.
Zachary Phillips.
Sheila Pichette.
Sheila Pichette.
Kirk Pitta.
Kirk Pitta.
Okay, Sam Polton.
Sam Polton. Sam? Huh?
Okay, Scott Pratt.
Scott Pratt.
No. Michael Reisbeck.
Michael Raisback.
Donna Redden.
Donna Reddy.
Joseph Reddy.
Joseph Reddy. Okay.
Yep, got
Okay.
it. Kevin Reddy.
Kevin Reddy.
Paul Ragazzi.
Paul Regazio.
Eric Salerno.
Eric Salerno.
Peter Schultz.
Peter Schultz.
Johanna Shaw.
Johanna Schull.
Colleen Stansfield.
Colleen Stansfield.
Phil Stanway.
Phil Stanway.
Carl Styling.
Carl Stalling.
Julie Stewart.
Julie Stewart.
Anita Tanini.
Anita Tanini.
Susan Tanner.
Susan Tanner.
Kenneth Tassie.
Kenneth Tassie.
Glenn Thorne.
Glenn Thorin.
Glenn Thorne is in favor here. And Glenn Thorne Jr.
Glenn Thorin Jr.
Michael Tully.
Michael Tully.
Yeah, but it's the second book.
Oh.
I'm not, this is Badri.
Badri Utalapan.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Karen Utek.
Karen Utek.
Robert Utek.
Robert Utek.
William Wagner.
William Wagner.
Michael Walsh.
Michael Walsh.
And Joshua Walsh.
Joshua Walsh.
In favor. And Caroline Wetzel.
Carolyn Wetzel.
And Virginia Williams.
Virginia Williams.
Patricia Wojcik.
Patricia Wojcik.
Okay. Charles Wojcik.
Charlie Wojcik. Abstain.
Okay. Make sure I understand that. Ann Worth.
Ann Worth.
Michael Young.
Michael Young.
And
George Zaharoulis.
Okay. Next book.
Okay, we got another book.
Luckily, there's only 17 in this book, so it's not bad. Okay. Ginger Scoop.
Ginger Scoot.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
It's under C.
Mabel Deviney. Divini? Mabel? In favor. Thank you.
Christopher Lavelle.
Chris LaValle?
Patrick Maloney.
Pat Maloney.
In favor.
Harrison Mayotte.
Harrison Mayotte.
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore.
Janet O'Donnell.
Janet O'Donnell.
Carissa Pajak.
Carissa Pajak.
And William Rice.
William Rice.
Maria Santos.
Maria Santos. Robert Schneider.
Is that a yes? Yes. Robert Schneider, is that a yes? Yes. Like you. Evelyn Thorne.
Evelyn Thorin.
In favor. I already take one. Jr. Robert Treosi Jr.
Robert Treosi Jr. Did I get that right?
Robert.
Robert?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, John, I'm sorry. John Treosi. In favor. Thank you. And John Tuberty.
John Tuberty.
And Kathy Tuberty.
Kathy Tuberty.
That's it. All right, now it's time to add them. All right.
Okay, well, they were working on it too.
Oh, I didn't call for you?
Joe
You got checked in? I know your name.
Opposed?
You're opposed. Okay, Joe, we got you. Tierney, Joe, opposed. No. So who's?
Anybody else you missed?
Oh, you were outside at the time that we called your name. And what do you want? Yes or no? Yes. All right, so did you say somebody else was keeping track of it?
Looks like they're keeping track right there.
Baez, okay. And that's-
Ted, are you keeping track up there?
Oh, well, try. So you get Ferdinand Baez is a yes? Ferdinand Baez is a yes? Yeah, Ferdinand Baez, yes, okay. All right, so does everybody, can you check that list? Can you guys look at that list and make sure we got everybody on there? Are all you people in the audience, you good?
Did we miss anyone? Thank goodness. Okay.
All right. I don't have to add them up. What do we got?
Yeah.
We got a total? No? Okay.
100. There's 100. It's 100 to 31 to 2.
Well, for those of you who are watching from home, either live or recording, this really is must-see town meeting TV. A extremely rare circumstance where an actual roll call vote was held.
Voted was 131
And,
and 2 abstentions. I thought there were more than 2. What? Just 2?
And it will be interesting to see the total. It certainly does seem to be
Tally it up.
overwhelmingly in excess of 2/3 majority. We'll find out in a moment.
Just go 1, 2, 3, 4. So, while we're totaling, I don't know if Ted's tied up.
They're doing some.
I thought she had the assistant counting while she was doing the roll.
What's really interesting about all this, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is, apart from the consent warrant, the consent article, which had a glitch and the voting on that was postponed until later. This is the first article of the entire town meeting warrant for which a vote is being taken and recorded. We are now 2 hours and 45 minutes into this town meeting, fall town meeting, and so given what I see here in terms of what's to come.
We have an unofficial number of 99 in favor, 33 opposed. It'll probably be a couple of votes one way or the other, but that is well within the 2/3. I don't know if we're in a position to do the consent agenda.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
motion to adjourn to 7:30 on Thursday night, given...
No, I'm not. Oh, I guess we can wait, but I think then we'll be here Monday and maybe even next Thursday.
You have a motion on the floor.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning till next Thursday, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
What about the consent agenda?
Well, we're getting to that. We can do the hand count on the consent agenda because it's really just a. You want a roll call on that? Oh, okay. Okay, so we're going to just do the hand count on the consent agenda because I think it was pretty clear, but I want to make sure again. All in favor of the consent agenda, raise your hands. All opposed? Okay. The consent agenda is passed. What are the numbers you've got?
Two abstentions. That's
What was the number?
100 in favor, 31 noes, 2 abstentions.
Okay, close enough to what the other number we had.
That's what I.
And it's 2/3 no matter which way you slice it. Okay. Article 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 8 it follows from Article 7, and again, we'll be real brief with this. We're seeking $50,000 from the Community Preservation Fund, basically to assist the town on how to proceed with the considerations of the use of the land and to prepare the property for public use. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on number 8?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 8.
How about the Select Board? Recommendation on Article 8.
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 8 with a vote of 4-0.
Any discussion or debate on that? There being none, we're going to try a hand count and see how that works. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, 2 opposed. Okay, 3 opposed.
Thank you.
No, Article 9.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 9 is a minor land acquisition. This is to acquire 1.15 acres off of Elm Street for $33,500. Basically, what this is this is acquiring a parcel of land that's located adjacent to the Cranberry Bog, which obviously the town owns as public space, and adjoining it is also two parcels that are owned by the Water District. And so this is the idea of expanding an existing wildlife corridor. The red dot that you see on the map there, it just illustrates where it's located. You can see Hart Pond is to the left of the top photo, and to the right is the Cranberry Bog. Here it is a little more magnified on the area of the Cranberry Bog. And basically, that's the parcel there, very much similar to the article that we put at Springtown meeting for the Stony Brook parcel, which again was around a similar amount of the assessed value to expand a wildlife natural corridor. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 9.
The Select Board have a recommendation.
The Select Board recommends approval of Article 9 with 3 in favor and 1 abstention.
Okay. Is there any question or debate on Article 9?
I would like to know, what are the taxes, Debbie Dairy, Precinct 6? I'd like to know what are the taxes on that property currently?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The assessed value is $33,500. So therefore, John, the tax bill on $33,000 is roughly 15. It's what, $15 about $600, right? It's $15 per 1,000 times 15 times 3. It's about $600.
And I want to know, is it a buildable, is that property, the acre a little over, is it a buildable property?
No, if it were a buildable lot, it'd be worth a lot more than $33,500.
Then why are we purchasing it? Isn't the person that owns that property, if they can't build on it and they're paying taxes on it, why do we have to purchase it?
Mr. Moderator, as I answered in my presentation, the goal is to expand an existing wildlife corridor out there of land that's owned publicly by the town and the Water District. I think the concern that I would have and why I move this forward is it actually could be combined with the adjoining property owner on the other side, which then could make land suitable for development. So I think the choice here is there's one of two things that's going to happen. The town can purchase this, or potentially, if it's left go to tax title, what have you, the value would be to the adjoining property owner where the land is dry and the adjoining property owner is dry.
So
that is the other use.
All right. So you're saying it's an acre, it's not buildable now, but it could be buildable after? How is that?
If you, in other words, if you combine the property with adjoining land that's held by another parcel, you may be able to put additional development in there. I don't know. I didn't do the engineering work, but that's what the two choices are here.
I didn't think that, forgive me if I'm incorrect, I didn't think we needed an acre of property to build a building on.
Right, but if your neighbor has land and if you had a half an acre and you needed an acre to buy it and your neighbor had 3/4 of an acre, you may be able to combine your properties to make it buildable over an acre. That's what I'm saying is it may have value to the adjoining property owner, which they could combine with other dry land to make more development on the adjoining parcel.
No, I don't understand.
Basically, two different property owners. So if you combined, the land would hold greater value if the adjoining property owner acquired this parcel of land and added it to their existing holding. So that is the other avenue, I would think, that would happen if the person who owns the land wanted to sell it.
Well, somebody mentioned to me this would be used, I didn't go to pre-town meeting, but I did listen to some of it, and I was told that it would be used for a second entrance. Why would we want to do that when the children in town like to convene amongst empty spaces?
I think what was said at the town meeting information session is it would provide an access via Elm Street side of the Cranberry Bog that currently doesn't exist by a public right-of-way. I don't believe that this is intended to provide an area for children or others to convene publicly. It would be a mean to provide access to that part of the bog, if necessary, by the town or another party. And also, as I said, it would also provide access to the water district's land that it holds. It's the adjoining property owner is the water district on two parcels to the south of that parcel.
Thank you.
Phil Stanway, Precinct 5. You might have just actually answered my question, a question to the moderator, the town manager. That section of the Cranberry Bog has been a issue for decades. There's an island out there, and it collects trash, and for a long time we've been asking to get access to that, but the landowners in the area have denied us access. So the only way we can clean it is either wait for it to freeze, or they've suggested we take canoes out and canoe across to clean the debris off the island. If we do purchase this, will it be possible to access that piece of land and thus be able to clean that side of the bog for the first time in 10 years?
Yes.
I would absolutely support this, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to try the hand count first, and because this is another 2/3 vote. If it is close, we will use the checkers because I'm not going to go through counting 130 names, and it'll be a lot quicker. If you are in favor of acquiring this parcel of property for $33,500 from free cash, raise your hand. If you're opposed, raise your hand. Okay, it passes with a couple of oppositions. Okay, Article 10.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 10 is a request to appropriate $1.5 million to reconstruct the Chelmsford High School kitchen, and this would be financed through borrowing. And I'm going to ask our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, to present this evening. We also have in attendance our Superintendent, Dr. Jay Lang, who could also answer any questions that may arise regarding the high school kitchen work. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you. So under this article, we're proposing additional to borrow $1.5 million for renovations of the Chelmsford High School kitchen. In FY24, under capital projects, we appropriated $641,000 for the renovations of this kitchen. We were back before town meeting this past spring for the renovations of the McCarthy kitchen, and we asking for more money. At that time, we were aware that we were approaching, and I'll go into in the following slides the reasons, but the need for additional costs for the kitchen of the high school when we asked for the additional funding for the McCarthy kitchen. At that time, we didn't want to ask for additional funds for the high school kitchen because we wanted to advance the design, and that's where we are today. As of right now, the town consultant has advanced design to just over 60%. The plan is to go out to bid this fall and then have construction start this summer. And this request is for 1.5 additional, bringing the total cost to $2.1 million. This equates to approximately 500 square feet, which aligns with the average industry cost per square foot currently as they are. And the reasons for the increase in cost is really multifaceted. Construction costs, as I've said before, and construction costs during and post-COVID has significantly increased. We're seeing construction costs. The last kitchen renovation that was completed before the McCarthy was the Parker. And if you take that cost to what it was in 2000, that was just at the onset of COVID, we're now looking at almost a double construction cost. Also, an inflation being 8.3%. The scope of work also, I think, as part of the $641,000, the scope of work has really expanded. I would call this a full renovation. At the time, the budget was prepared for $641,000. It was looking to upgrade the equipment. The school is built in 1974. A lot of the space is original to 1974. So this really is a full replacement. We're talking flooring replacement, and there's also expanding on just replacement of the space itself. We're completely reconfiguring the layout to improve surface efficiency, including opening up of walls to make that happen. Also not included in the original figure of the $641,000 was renovation of an additional 2,000 square foot in ancillary space for storage. That was not originally included in this scope. Also, as we advance the scope, looking just at the HVAC, electrical, and plumbing needs itself, that alone amounts to almost between $600,000 and $700,000. So really substantial needs for those trade scopes. Looking also at the kitchen equipment. The kitchen equipment, looking back at just a few years ago, has increased by 60%, and that wasn't really budgeted in the original $641,000. An exterior grease trap is also required as part of this project, and that was not originally budgeted for. And lastly, given the size of this project, so anything over $1.5 million requires us to hire an OPM. So we also have carried about a 3% cost to hire an OPM to complete this project. If I can just, this project has really grown to be more of a full renovation, and it estimated at $2.1 million. We shouldn't have to return to the space for many years. Any questions?
Okay, we first have to go through a process. That's fine. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation on Article 10?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 10.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 10 with a vote of 4-0.
Questions?
George Zaharos, Precinct 2. Does this include the ventilation system as well? Upgrading the ventilation system above the equipment?
There are some adjustments to the ventilation system, not a full HVAC ventilation improvement, but particular to some of the equipment to bring to code, but not, I guess, a full HVAC replacement.
I'm talking about the ventilation system over the equipment.
The hoods?
The hood systems.
So they will meet code.
Okay, so that's an upgrade to those as well.
Yes.
So you can start the clock. Part of my job is exactly what you see here, and I concur with Ms. Clancy on the increase in the equipment cost. I have seen in the last 3 or 4 years, equipment costs go up 40, 50, and 60%. So I understand the numbers you're coming from, and I do agree with you on that. One other thing is those walk-in coolers were installed, I think, within the last 10 years. Are those coming out as well, or are those going to stay in the position that they are?
The coolers are staying.
Okay. So I agree. This kitchen, I've been in this kitchen, and this kitchen is definitely vintage 1970s. And at that time, you served one meal. Now they have food courts, and they do all kinds of different things. So to bring this up to par to today's standards is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ginger Skoog, Precinct 5. Mr. Moderator, through you to the speaker. I have a question about timing. So currently, Chelmsford High School Kitchen, I believe, provides some of the cooking for some of the other schools. By the time this starts, will the other schools all be doing their own in-house cooking? Or will they still be reliant upon CHS?
So Superintendent or Dr. Lane can probably elaborate on that, but right now we are finishing the renovations to the McCarthy kitchen. So that will be done, actually it's essentially done this month. So that will be in play, that will be complete, and there's no other renovations proposed at this time next summer.
Yeah, so we have 3 functioning kitchens right now, the high school and the 2 middle schools. Those are the only 3 kitchens we actually cook in. We couldn't afford to do more than one project at a time because we need to have them be operational. McCarthy will come fully online by the end of October, so McCarthy and Parker would have both been completely renovated within the last 2 years. In the event that something happened at the high school where we weren't ready to go right on day one, we could supplement using McCarthy and Parker kitchens to get us off the ground. That's what we actually had to do this year at McCarthy when we ran over schedule on that one. The high school and Parker have actually been cooking and providing the food to be served at McCarthy. So we do have that contingency plan in case it's needed.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? This does require a 2/3 vote, and we're going to try the hand count thing again. If you're in favor of funding the Chelmsford High School kitchen, please raise your hands. If you're opposed, please raise your hands. Okay, virtually unanimous. Article 11.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 11 is a request to transfer $1.5 million from free cash to fund roadway and sidewalk construction. This is the same amount that we requested a year ago at Fall Town Meeting, and I hope that you've seen as you've driven here tonight and otherwise during this past year, the amount of progress that we're making on our roadway improvements. I'm going to turn the presentation over to our Public Works Director, Christine Clancy, who's been overseeing this work.
Thank you. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has level funded Chapter 90 roadway construction for the past 11 years, $200 million across municipalities. So the town has received approximately $1.15 million in Chapter 90 funding. We are looking to receive an additional $500,000 as part of the recently enacted fair share or amendment or millionaire's tax. Still with that funding, and then also we supplement annually with roadway and sidewalk construction, an amount of $750,000. That still brings us to a shortfall, and I'll get into the next slide in terms of our backlog of roadway and sidewalk needs. So the appropriation of this $1.5 million would provide approximately additional 3 miles of roadway rehabilitation. So right now, there's about a $75 million backlog between paving needs and sidewalk needs. We have 187 miles of roadway, we have 46.5 miles of existing sidewalk, and then also we've identified potentially 14 miles of new sidewalk to help close some of those existing gaps within our sidewalk master plan. We completed a pavement management master plan in 2022, and then just this past year, a sidewalk management master plan, and that is what we update annually to build our sidewalk and paving plan. As you see here, here is the 2024 paving list and also the 2025 paving list. This is based on the Chapter 90 funding that we've been receiving annually, supplemented by the capital funding. The plan would be to take that $1.5 million from free cash and revise these plans, see what we can move forward. Also looking, this is just a paving list, looking where we could potentially have sidewalk that was already as part of our plan. Some examples are Cushing Place is on the 2024 paving list, and I know we have sidewalk in the plan to add there, so that's something we would look to potentially add. Old Westford Road, we just recently paved a portion of it. There's still a remaining portion that needs to be completed. That's proposed for 2025. 2025, so maybe we can move that up to next year. In that segment, the reason why that has been pushed off is because there's a section of missing sidewalk. That had been identified in our sidewalk master plan as a need for added sidewalk, especially in proximity to schools. So that's potentially something we would also move forward. Parkhurst Street is another example that has been pushed off because it was an opportunity for new sidewalk. So we would potentially move that into the plan. So the proposal would be to really revitalize these two plans this next few months, and then be publishing it for our paving and sidewalk list for this coming year, and then also the subsequent year. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 11.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 11 with a 4-0 vote.
Anyone have any questions regarding using some free cash money for sidewalks and paving?
Okay. Tom Amaro, Precinct 5. Just a quick question. That section on Westford Street from south of Dalton to Bridge Street, does that include sidewalk or is it just street paving?
For Westford Street, that isn't in the, you mean Old Westford Road or Westford Street?
No, Westford Street from Dalton down to Bridge Street in the 2025 paving list. Is that including sidewalk or is it not?
So the 2020 paving list was just for the paving, so that's something we would have to look at to see if we can add on the sidewalk.
Okay, so we don't know yet.
We don't know, and that would be the process over the next few months to see what we could add.
I'd just like to recommend that'd be a good section to put some sidewalk in. Thank you.
Hi, Ginger Skoog, Precinct 5. So we've got the paving list here, and you'll be working on the sidewalk list. What is the process going to be for validating that sidewalk list with making the decisions? I know previously you've had the assessment done. Just wondering what the stakeholder process is going to be like.
Sure. So we do have a sidewalk master plan that did identify areas that we have to look at. The existing network. Also, we have curb ramps or the ADA pedestrian ramps we have to update, so we do have to commit annual funds to that as well. And then you're left with the pieces, the missing gaps. So what we look is where we, on the paving, if we see paving that's about to happen, if there's a missing gap that's been identified, that plan is published on our DPW website, and it's been presented at various committee meetings. So essentially, the sidewalk would either have to be recommended on a repair list as an existing sidewalk, or part of that 14 miles of sidewalk that has been identified already. New sidewalk.
And that was simply from your assessment of from 2 years ago?
Just this past,
this
past March, we did the assessment, and we at DPW basically built. Okay, so look at the assessment, we identify where there's gaps, and especially proximity to centers or to the schools where those gaps were. We also looked at the feasibility of installing sidewalks in some areas. An example I'll just say is so I think previously there was a sidewalk proposed along Acton Road as you leave the center. Looking at that really isn't feasible given the width of the road. So we looked at or sometimes you have culverts as being prohibitive, where you'd have to build bridges. So we did a deep dive to look to see where we could connect the network with those 14 miles of sidewalk. We did present that to various committees, Select Board, Bike Ped Committee, Age Friendly Committee, the School Committee, so it has been presented to various committees as well.
And with that presentation, what was the feedback mechanism?
Public input at that session.
Got it. Mr. Moderator, you can start the clock for discussion. I'm going to be up here every single time you bring up roadways and sidewalks. I think that the assessment continues to be without enough public input, enough public notice. I see it as something that is much more intimate to residents and needs much more publicity from DPW. A lot of us here at town meeting, we know how the things work. We know how to get this information. It's not clearly published in ways that our town residents know and understand how to get the input to them. You need to be at the PTOs. You need to be at the resident meetings that get this information to the people who are most concerned. And I get that our center and our senior walkable areas are great, but our school areas where we are paying to have to bus our kids to school because there is no safe way for them to get to existing sidewalks continues to be a problem. It's not just a 1 mile look at on a map. It needs the input of the parents, the residents who are within those areas, and DPW needs to be doing a better job of getting that so that it can influence not just what you guys are seeing on the ground, but also bringing in the need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Badri Upliapan, Precinct 11, to the presenter. What kind of use analysis data or monitoring do you do in terms of how the sidewalks are getting used, either towards the school or the other parts of the sidewalks that are being looked at for renovation and replacement or maintenance?
So we do not do counts as how, like, in terms of the amount of pedestrians using a space. We look more at the spaces that we know that people are trying to get to. So schools, centers, business centers, that was identified, or parks is another, those were identified. And I guess we created, so the assessment didn't do a utilization, it was more of a heat map, I guess, just more so where people were going. So the more of a cluster of parks, schools, senior center that you have in an area, that presented, I guess, a larger cluster. So it wasn't a utilization. That study, we did not go to that detail.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, you can start the clock. More suggestions here than big debate point, but I think as we look at a new way of living in the world of sustainability, we have to consider walkable spaces and services. And it's very important to understand where the usability requirements are, where the services are located and co-located, and plan for the ability for residents to be able to walk. It's been a common complaint that traffic in town is increasing, so we've got to be able to try and deviate from some traffic to walking or bicycling paths. I know that there's certain areas that now in town have more bikeable paths, but as we go along, we have to give critical attention to this. It's likely that we may not be able to sustain as much roadways everywhere and maintain them, whereas we could promote healthy living with walkable pathways. So I think it behooves, to the prior speaker who spoke before me also, to take a better look at the needs assessment and public participation and inputs and combine it with appropriate zoning or planning board resources for where services are being cited, so that we can create more of a local community of reachable services, just sort of the village model. So Chelmsford has many villages across the board, and if you look at the history of where the development was, services were centered around reachability or accessibility. So please do consider that going forward, whether it be through DPW processes or planning board processes. But I'm sure this will be a potential input at the combined strategic planning framework point, but this should be taken into account. Let's not just do a quick maintenance and replace it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Tuberty, Precinct, are we 8 now? I think. I live on High Street, and you guys just repaved our road. So question, and then it's a debate, but it's like not even a debate, it's just a comment. Some people got granite because they had granite before on the border of their street for lesson learned. We're not going to get that to change on High Street. it's been paved. But for folks that would want to have granite instead of having the berm, is there a way that they could go and have that installed as you're redoing the road? Because you guys rip out the stuff, it would be like the perfect time to do it.
Sure. So the cost of granite is quite sizable compared to cost of berm. So for us to install granite everywhere would be a larger expense that we just haven't budgeted. We do install granite. Granite is standard for where we have sidewalks or if there's existing granite. We do, I mean, this year alone, I think we added 1,200 feet of berm. So just the cost of the berm versus the cost of the granite would be substantial that we just haven't planned for.
I asked the question wrong. If I, as a homeowner, would rather have had granite in front and I was willing to pay for that granite, could you guys install it for me? When you were putting in the road?
Yeah, we don't have that, because I guess the thing is, if you wanted granite and the next person wouldn't, that would be, the contract is not budgeted, is not planned for that way.
Okay.
We pre-scope so the contractor knows what they're installing. So
All right.
right now, there's no mechanism to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank you. You guys did a phenomenal job on High Street. It was quick. I mean, there were a couple of days in between things, but I think the team was efficient. I actually really want to thank the police force. They were phenomenal. They were very patient, lots of good notification. The motorcycle markings to warn them was phenomenal. So personally, and for those on High Street that are at this table, I want to thank you guys. You did a phenomenal job. That's it.
Thank you. So on that high note, we're going to vote on appropriating $1.5 million for roadway and sidewalk construction. All in favor? All opposed? Nearly unanimous, so it's certainly a two-thirds vote. Article 12.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 12 is a request to transfer $100,000 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings to address sewer infiltration and inflow. It's a pretty straightforward article, and I'm going to ask our Public Works Director to provide the overview.
Thank you. So earlier this evening, when I presented the ARPA projects, one of the projects was the infiltration to inflow assessment. Coming out of the assessment, one of the recommendations was to rehabilitate 200 manholes where infiltration was found. So this article will fund the design and bidding of this project. And just to go a little bit into the need for this project, I think as everyone here might be aware, is we have a sewer capacity restraint. The town is allocated 2.9 million gallons a day of flow from the Lowell treatment plant. That approximately is 87 million gallons a month. We track this on a monthly basis, and so especially recently with the rain that we've had the rainiest season in really unprecedented. And we've been tracking it. So if you asked me last summer, we were not at capacity, but approaching capacity. But there are correlations between our capacity and the wet weather events or the rainy season. So just in terms of some numbers that I really think are alarming, right now with all the rain we've had, we are at capacity, we've exceeded capacity. If you look at this past August, approximately 87 million gallons is our allotment. We were at 92 million gallons. We've exceeded it. If we continue that on a monthly basis, we've exceeded our capacity, which potentially, could potentially be finable as a potential result. If you look back at last August, we only got so this past August we got just under 11 inches of rain, we're above capacity. If you look at last August, we got 59 million gallons of flow in that month, and that really was a drought. So huge, from 59 million gallons a month to 87 million gallons, there is a correlation between the wet weather. And so in order to try to address this would be to try to take some infiltration out of the system. Like I said, we also have another program. We're looking at inflow removal as well. Right now, there's a sump pump inspection program, trying to see how we can remove sump pumps from the system as well. So this really is a critical project to address a very critical problem we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 12.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 12 by a vote of 4-0.
Anyone have any questions regarding stormwater and infiltration and stuff?
Hi, Sue Carter, Precinct 11. If I&I is such a problem and we're fixing these 200 manholes, is there any consideration given to if somebody needs more sewage flow capacity than their current building, that they can pay for I&I abatement in order to get a bigger allotment of our sewage amount?
Yes, that's a good question. So we previously had a sewer moratorium in place where you couldn't get the capacity. We, to try to allow some growth, we do have a sewer capacity restriction policy, and through that, it allows you to buy inflow at a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you need and also we give 500 gallons as kind of a buffer per a connection. So it is for commercial properties. It is not for residential. But we have had some developers come through commercial properties and through their project say, okay, I need an additional 1,000 gallons. They're required to buy 2,000 gallons because it's a 2-to-1 ratio. And right now our fee is $35 a gallon. And that essentially, we've calculated that through this process to see what it's going to potentially cost to rehabilitate all these 200 manholes eventually,
And have we had a system-wide study done to determine how many potential areas that we can remediate to cut down on the I&I, or is this just working knowledge of the worst manholes?
So this was just a snapshot at 12% of the system. We will be continuing to inspect our entire system. It's just we can't inspect all of it at once. That has a cost as well and time. So we're just continuing. Also, we monitor the pump stations, and if we see spikes in flow, sometimes we will try to track down where we might have inflow. We have found some actually just by seeing some spikes at the pump station. So we're out daily, but also we have these programs. So programs like this will have to continue to try to find those sources. Also, there's the inflow component. So catch basins, roof leaders, sump pumps. We have a pilot program right now for sump pumps where people, if they have a sump pump that's hard piped to the sewer, we will inspect for free and also try to redirect to the stormwater for free. That is another project right now. In coordination with DEP, we will likely be required other methods. Lowell's doing smoke testing right now. We will be required to do smoke testing to find those sources at some time.
Okay, you just mentioned catch basins being tied into the sewer system. Our system is relatively new and was fully inspected.
So it's likely not right-of-way catch basins, potentially if someone, like a parking lot, had connected. So I'd be surprised if we found catch basins within the right-of-way. The numbers show that there's inflow and infiltration. So if we were to smoke test an area, potentially you'd find catch basins. It's just a potential, something to consider. My guess is it would be private.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Alvin Draymond, Precinct 7. I read this and I move that the town transfer $100,000, blah, 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 to correct, remedy, repair, prevent, and prohibit any and all forms of infiltration and stuff. Wow, $100,000 for 200 manholes. Then I read the fine print at the bottom. This will fund the design and building this project. Can you give a rough estimate what the project really will cost?
So this particular project is estimated to cost $700,000. This particular project, but there's more infiltration, inflow removal that will have to happen down the line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, this is a simple majority. All in favor of funds to deal with that? Yes. Okay, all opposed? Passes. You think we can do this one? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. This final article for this evening, I believe, is Article 13, and it's, again, like the previous one, it's rather straightforward. It's a request to raise and appropriate $5,000 to remediate PFAS in the soil and groundwater in the town's highway out of Richardson Road. This is an annual expense. I'm going to ask the Public Works Director to provide an update on the overview of this project.
Thank you. So PFAS has been detected at 54 Richardson, which is a DPW facility, 54 Richardson Road. This was found in June of 2021 during a monitoring event. We also have found the source, and since 2021, we have been treating the site. The site is in close proximity to North Chelmsford Water District wells. And so I said, yeah, we have a consultant, we're doing remediation. We have a treatment system that has been installed, and that pumps, treats, and re-injects groundwater into the ground, and this will continue for a period of years. So this is an annual expense in order to complete this remediation. Typically, annually, we're looking at about $250,000, but this before you is $425,000. And if you ask why is it a lot more this year, it is because of I'm just going to get my notes, is the task that it's associated with. It is so an additional $175,000. And we have to do a comprehensive site assessment investigation. This requires that we install 2 new wells down to bedrock and do a whole hydrogeological study for these wells. And so that is $175,000. That is a cost required this year. It's not something that we'll be continuing in future years or not anticipating. So next year, it being an annual cost would likely be, again, $250,000. Here is a breakdown of how the estimate has been provided and how we would spend the $425,000. And this is proposed for calendar year 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 13.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board unanimously recommends approval of Article 13 by a vote of 4-0.
Any questions regarding this to deal with PFAS? There being none,
Sorry. Quick question. About how much longer do you expect this to have to keep going on?
We don't have an answer for that. We know it's years. So I can't tell you if it's 5 years, 10 years. We don't know the answer quite yet. We can say that we have seen results in a positive, it has been working, but we don't have a timeline as to the overall duration.
okay, thank you. Simple majority on this one. All in favor of the transfer of the $425,000 free cash? All opposed? Unanimous. It's almost 11 o'clock. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn till Thursday. All in favor? So it's Thursday at 7:30 here. And hopefully we'll have a system that works.
So after usual 3.5 hours of town meeting, which is pretty typical for a session, we call this one to a close. It's going to be the first of at least 2. I think we could probably get the rest of the warrant articles covered in the next meeting, which will be Thursday at 7:30. This was an interesting one in that right out of the gate, so to speak, problems were encountered when we tried to have a consent agenda vote, and there were some serious problems with the electronics that recorded the tallies of the town meeting reps. That did not get resolved throughout the whole meeting. So as you saw here, there were several hand counts and even one roll call vote. That one roll call vote was important. It authorized the purchase of 42 acres of open space on the south end of town along Pine Hill Road for $4.2 million. And there was a lot of debate about that as you saw back and forth, whether it was actually worth it, and whether it was we were paying too high a price and so forth. But ultimately, it was a quite lopsided vote requiring a 2/3 majority. And then another one of the debates was over the road and sidewalk construction, although in this case, it's everyone wants to have roads and sidewalks built in town. They're very expensive to do. The state does not provide enough money to do that on an ongoing basis. And so for last year and now this coming year, that budget will be augmented by $1.5 million from free cash. And speaking of which, we haven't gotten to it yet, but there is a couple of articles for next week, for later this week, including what to do with the remaining, after all of that free cash has been spent. There'll still be nearly $1 million, $947,000, and that will be proposed to go to the stabilization fund, the rainy day fund. And if you were paying attention to the very first analysis, the 5-year economic plan by John Sousa, we have a very large budget, and the amount of money in our stabilization fund is roughly $13 million, which sounds like a lot, but it's roughly roughly 10% of any year's budget. So it would only partially make up for a shortfall, even if we spent all of it. A lot yet to cover, and so we invite you to come back here on Thursday night. And I want to thank you from the staff of Chelmsford Telemedia and myself, Kelly Beatty, for joining us this evening. Have a good night.